Welcome in to Check the Mic. Steve Palazzolo Sam Monson back on YouTube.
Hopefully.
Brought to you by FanDuel. Antonio Cromartie studio on par with Huggies. We had to restart.
Everything in the room has been rebooted.
To most people watching this, the majority, they haven't noticed anything different, but we did have to start and restart the stream for the live audience. We apologize, but we're back.
Yes.
We will lose the friendly banter at the top.
We'll come back.
We'll come back to it.
Yeah.
But the couple
Circle back around.
But we did have a couple quick announcements for the regular audience. Go ahead.
You made your triumphant return to the baseball diamond. 14 years after your exit from the field.
Pales in comparison to your big announcement, though.
I got the notice. Yesterday I got a notice saying there had been an update in my case. Today I got the notice that the update is a date for my naturalization ceremony. So
Huge.
3 weeks today, I will be an American citizen.
Congratulations, party. And as I suggested on the original live stream, which is now dead, if you want to send a care package to Sam to welcome him to America, check the mic at the33team.com. Email us if you want to get an address, and you could send some hot dogs and whatever else.
There's a lot of things that would be very typically American that would be quite risky, I think, to send by mail. Like ammo and that kind of thing. Ammo and hot dogs.
Let's go to the gun range and celebrate. Anyway.
I'm up for that. Shooting's fun.
Congratulations to you. And we'll break down my return to baseball.
So I just got 3 weeks to avoid the ice people.
You got this. Later on the show. We're going to have some fun. Anyway, apologize again for the stream issues and the internet issues coming out of the room here. The bill's been paid. Just wasn't working well.
Only one time have we crapped out internet because we forgot to pay the bill.
Only once.
Only once.
Since then, we paid the bill. It's just been spotty.
Maybe it's been a punishment thing because we didn't pay that one time. We're getting throttled consistently.
All right, we're going to talk Myles Garrett trade, the A.J. Brown trade, and a bunch of re-signings. A lot of news this week.
I got to stop saying the names wrong. My brain keeps malfunctioning and talking about Aaron Donald when we're banging on about Myles Garrett.
We'll be talking Aaron Donald as well.
No, I know. That's, I think, part why my brain is doing that.
Because there's some fun stuff that could be going down. So Myles Garrett was traded. For those who aren't aware either, why is this all happening on June 1st? June 1st is it changes the math as far as salary cap hits, right? So the reason why you hear about post June 1st and pre June 1st, after June 1st, the salary cap hit can then be spread over the course of a contract, not just all in one season, which is why the A.J. Brown thing needed to wait so that the Eagles didn't take a massive salary cap hit just for 2027.
Yeah, so it's why we were always waiting until now for the A.J. Brown news and deal to go down. But it's also, interestingly, it's the reason the Myles Garrett thing went down in the first place. The great Jordan Rodriguez put out a sort of breakdown of how this whole thing came about. And part of this is that the Rams had basically been asking about Myles Garrett for a couple of years now, and every time they'd been rebuffed. But the really interesting thing that I was trying to find from this article and was in there was, did this get sparked by the Browns adjusting Myles Garrett's contract, or did the Browns adjust Myles Garrett's contract because this had already been sparked, right? Which one came first? Which was the chicken and which was the egg? And she did confirm that the Browns basically sent the bat signal up, right? When they did that thing earlier this offseason of adjusting his contract, and then everyone was like, well, are you trading Myles Garrett? And Andrew Berry was like, no. Myles Garrett's going to be a Brown for life, and I know what you're talking about. It's like literally the only reason to do what you just did is to make Myles Garrett's contract more tradable, right? Now, we can debate whether that means now or next year or the year beyond, but literally the only purpose of doing what you did is to make him more tradable. And it does seem like that was what piqued the Rams' interest and made them go, oh, look, for the first time, maybe Myles Garrett is, in fact, attainable. And then from the next few months from that point on, they then worked to get this deal done. But it's literally the Browns signal this. Like, they put the signal in the air with that contract adjustment in March or whenever they did that. And that's ultimately what led. That's the first domino that led to this blockbuster trade.
And as I said earlier on the deleted stream,
yes,
a thank you text has been sent
to Les. Yeah,
to Les for the news. Thanks for just keeping it fun here in June. So the official trade, Myles Garrett traded from the Cleveland Browns to the Los Angeles Rams in exchange for Jared Verse, a 2027 first-round pick, a 2028 second-round pick, and a 2029 third-round pick, which gets the conditional tag. The condition is it could become a first-round pick if the Rams trade Myles Garrett to another team, I believe just in the AFC
I think you're right.
North. So a fun little condition on the 29 pick so that the Steelers, Ravens, or Bengals will never get Myles Garrett from the Rams. So it's a monster deal. And as you said as well, we have a live reaction up there. A lot of people watch that. Appreciate everybody getting the live reaction. We were not privy to those parts of the terms, the second and third round pick, which were added on at the time.
Right. The second and the third round pick were emerged later. Everyone had the news. Everyone had the Jared Verse in the first round pick, and it was sort of being talked about as details to be finalized. And the details to be finalized ended up being an extra second and a third round pick in the future, which do alter it makes the value significantly higher, you know? So it is it's an important detail in that whole trade. But as we were saying in the previous deleted tweet or thread stream, this deal is unprecedented, I think, in a couple of different ways. You can argue, people have been saying things like Myles Garrett might be the best player that has ever been traded in the NFL. It's debatable. You know, Randy Moss the first time around when the Vikings traded him to the Raiders. There are other people in that argument. But it's certainly, I think you could probably make the argument that he's the best player to be traded at the peak of his powers in terms of Myles Garrett is coming off a Defensive Player of the Year season in which he broke the sack record. That's basically never happened before. Similarly, players like Jared Verse basically never get traded. He still has 2 years remaining on his rookie contract with a fifth-year option on the back end of that because he's a first-round pick. He's a high-end player, rookie of the year, 160 pressures or whatever in the first 2 years of his career, being traded just 2 seasons into his NFL career. Those guys basically never get dealt. So in multiple different ways, this is basically an unprecedented kind of trade.
So potentially best player in the NFL, best defensive player in the NFL, and a heading into year 3, first contract, cost-controlled star.
Yes.
In Jared Verse.
And this is why I tweeted something along the lines, and people obviously misinterpreted this because that's what people do on Twitter. But I was like, if you were starting from a blank sheet of paper and you're like, okay, we are trading away Myles Garrett, right? If I give you that's the stipulation here. It's happening. We're moving on. We're cashing in now. Here's a blank piece of paper. Write down 5 names you would want to get back in that trade, right? No object. What would you want to get? Obviously, you're not getting Mahomes, right? Be realistic about this. Who would you want back? And therefore, you're also not getting back, Will Anderson Jr. or whatever, right? You're looking for players that fit the kind of mold of who's actually realistically attainable. You would want a high-end pass rusher that is cost-controlled with multiple years left on that cheap deal, right? Jared Verse, I think, would be in the top 5 names you would want back from that blank sheet of paper. And to get him as part of the deal with an additional first-round pick, with 2 additional future picks on top of that, I think is fantastic business from the Browns' perspective. Again, if you stipulate we are trading away Myles Garrett. Generally speaking, I'm in team don't trade away elite players, right? I just don't want to do that. If I'm an NFL team, I wouldn't have traded Randy Moss for the Vikings. I'm not trading those guys away. But if that's a burned bridge, if you're doing that, and I get why you would at this point in his career for the Browns, if you are trading him away, getting Jared Verse back as part of the deal, I think is as good as you could do.
Let's break down both sides of it. Where do you want to start, though? I want to discuss the Browns' point of it, the Rams' point of it, and also the players along the way. What are you getting in Myles Garrett? Because we talk about him a lot as he's elite, but why? So what are you getting in Garrett and Verse and everything going forward?
Let's start with why are the Browns doing it? Because I think they're going to get a lot of criticism because you're trading away, again, arguably the best player in the NFL, right? I think it's a fairly strong argument you could make that there is nobody better at what they do than Myles Garrett in the NFL right now. So why do you trade that guy away?
So I think when we called this a win-win on the show. What was the other win-win we had? Oh, the Travis Hunter deal. I thought we considered. We both said was kind of a win-win, probably riskier on Jacksonville's side. And look, I know there's a lot of I don't want to respond to all the online discourse. There's some online discourse where it's like the analytics community just looks at the community. Positive EV, right? And it's like when you run the numbers, getting younger and cheaper is always going to come out better numerically, right? And then there's just a lot of football people who are just like, give me the Rams didn't go all in when they got Von Miller. They got a superstar. Who cares? They gave up a couple unknown draft picks, right? And then they won a Super Bowl. Like, who cares? You got Myles Garrett. Who cares about this EV thing? And I see both sides of it, and I think there's truth in both sides of it. From what makes a good deal is teams in different parts of their life cycle. And the Browns getting younger and cheaper and not just giving up Garrett, right? Because I'm with you. Like, I was trying to concoct ways, if they were going to trade Garrett, how do you get enough in return? And if Max Crosby was going to go for 2 1s, and Micah Parsons was going to go for 2 1s, and Parsons was going for 2 1s, and he was getting a new contract. Garrett was different because he's not necessarily getting a new contract, and if anything, he's super cheap for the trading team relative, because he's going to get paid the same amount, but some of it's coming from the Browns, right? And so he's super cheap. So it's like 2 1s isn't enough. But you put Jared Verse in there, and as you said, that's a unique situation. A year 3 player who's already a star. He's a star at that position. Top 5 to 8 at that position, Jared Verse. That is unique. And so from the Browns' perspective, if you still have quarterback questions, you're just getting your offensive line rebuilt, you're just adding a lot of talent over the last 2 years, a couple receivers, a linebacker, 2 running backs. Like, you're just getting younger in some key spots. You're getting the roster back in order. It makes a lot of sense for the Browns, who probably aren't going to win in a couple of years. And then they were playing this. They were doing this dance. They were doing this let's keep Myles Garrett happy dance. Oh yeah, we got veteran Joe Flacco last year. We've got Deshaun Watson, the veteran. We're going to go win. You can't say we're rebuilding. We're just going to give Shedeur a shot this year, and then we'll see. We'll probably draft next year. Now you can, because you're acknowledging we're getting younger, cheaper. We're trying to compete in 2027 and beyond. That's who we are as the Browns, and I think that's okay for their point in their life cycle as a team.
Well, so people have made the argument of, because remember, Myles Garrett was reported he demanded a trade before. He was unhappy. They then ended up giving him the blockbuster contract and keeping him in the building, right? So you're like, well, if you're going to trade him, why not trade him then, right? Why not move on from him at that point? I do genuinely think that their plan and their time scale changed because all the quarterbacks in this draft just evaporated, right? Remember, you rewind a year and a bit ago, and we were praising their strategy overall because it's like, okay, they trade down in the draft, right? You let Jacksonville get Travis Hunter. You cash in on the deal they're offering. You still get Mason Graham, who we thought was a superstar prospect. You add multiple picks next year. You take 2 low-risk swings at quarterback in Dylan Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders, and you don't really believe either one of those guys is going to pan out because they're a 3rd and a 5th round pick respectively, but it's a low-cost shot to nothing, right? If they pan out, great. If they don't, doesn't matter. They'll probably, in fact, if anything, I mean, it's not better, but it's as good, right? Because if they don't pan out, we probably suck. We're probably picking high in the draft. We have an extra 1st-round pick as well, and they probably didn't expect it to be as low as it was because Jacksonville weren't expected to be as good as they were. And so we have multiple 1st-round picks. We get our quarterback in 2026, and all's good, right? And then all the quarterbacks that were supposed to be there in the 2026 draft just disappeared. And suddenly it became a Mendoza draft. And if you didn't believe in Ty Simpson the way the Rams apparently did, you didn't have a quarterback shot, right? So then they did what, again, I think is fine. They pivoted in a different direction. They didn't force a quarterback pick. They went offensive line. They went other, wide receiver. They addressed all the other stuff. And then they're like, we'll figure out quarterback next year again, right, when it's supposed to be. We just basically punted it down the road. But I do think, given Myles Garrett's age, that changes the plan because all of a sudden you're like, well, if it's going to be another year before we find a quarterback, right, if we're not drafting one to 2027, Myles Garrett will be 31 years old at that point. He'll be going into his 32 season later on in that year. Is the time scale ever going to sync up? Like, by the time the rookie quarterback in 2027 is good enough for this team to be useful, is Myles Garrett going to be a good player anymore? Or is he, going to be an impact player anymore? I think you can realistically say it's risky enough that we could also just cash in now if we get Jared Verse back, and now we've got, multiple firsts again, extra picks, and Jared Verse. And Jared Verse's timeline is going to sync up much better with that 2027 rookie than Myles Garrett's is. If there was a quarterback this year, right, if Dante Moore from Oregon had come out and the Browns had been able to take him and found a different answer at offensive tackle and blah, 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 then I think they would have kept Myles Garrett, because all of a sudden you've just drafted your quarterback, right? If that guy's good right off the bat, you're immediately a team that can do something with Myles Garrett. And then year two, is when you really expect to win with that young quarterback, and Myles Garrett will still be only 31 going on 32, and that makes sense. I think the second they got this year and there's there's no quarterback, we don't have a shot at one, I think that changed the plan. I think they then looked at this and said, do we need to start thinking about what can we get from Myles Garrett?
And so they restructured the deal.
Yep.
And they had done that before the draft anyway, almost, because they knew
what
the quarterback class was.
They did it before the draft, but deep enough in that it was I think because they
knew they were picking
landscape.
at 6. They knew that they weren't getting a quarterback.
Yeah, they looked at the landscape and was like, we're not getting Mendoza, and there are no other quarterbacks, right? So there is no quarterback this year, effectively.
So, look, again, to football people, I mean, if your default is you don't trade great football players, why would you trade him
Which is my default.
For mystery boxes? I think it's fine. In this case, though, you at least got a guy that's like 80% of Garrett, and we'll talk about their progression and regression, like what that looks like. You at least got a player that's a percentage of what Garrett can be.
Yeah. And again, they've made a big point of that already, and I do think there's some truth to the idea that I don't know that they make this deal if Jared Verse is not part of the equation, right? Like if Jared Verse had been off the table and they had to make a deal happen, I don't know that they do this just for like another first-round pick, 2 firsts and the second. I don't know. I think they might have needed Jared Verse in order to pull this trigger.
3 firsts, maybe.
Maybe, but I do believe them when they say, Jared Verse is the thing that made this work. Without him, it's not a deal we're that interested in doing.
And so when you look at the young nucleus for the Browns, I mean, this was what else should they do from a roster perspective? Because again, I go back to the Deshaun Watson deal, blowing up this entire roster. Not only has he struggled as a quarterback and been awful, they lost the youth movement because of the draft picks they gave up, and they have not had the cap flexibility. So now, over the last 2 years, they've added the first and second round receiver, Casey Concepcion and Denzel Boston, Harold Fannin at tight end, Spencer Fano as your left tackle of the future, revamped the offensive line, the 2 young running backs, Quinshon Judkins and Dylan Sampson, Carson Schwessinger at linebacker, Mason Graham at defensive tackle, who had a really nice rookie season. So now you've got this young nucleus to build around, and you're creating this ecosystem for when and if you finally find the quarterback next year. And I think this is the right, given the Watson failure. I said the same thing about the Mason Graham trade. Giving up Travis Hunter to go get the extra 1. I mean, now they're just stacking extra good young players to build around. And I think it was exactly what the Browns have needed at this point in their life cycle, which, as you laid out, was never going to match up with, hey, you've got this elite Myles Garrett. They were so good defensively last year. And it didn't matter.
Do you agree, though?
The offense was so bad.
Do you agree, though, that the reason this is happening from a Cleveland perspective is Myles Garrett's age, right? Like if Myles Garrett were 3 years younger, they wouldn't be doing this deal. It's because they haven't got a quarterback. They know they're at least another year away from finding a quarterback, and therefore Myles Garrett may not be Myles Garrett at the point where they have the next quarterback, right? So from an institutional standpoint, they're trying to work out when, they're trying to make this team good at the same time, not individual pieces of it good at various points along the way. And, Mike Sando has this interesting breakdown of the drop-off levels of elite pass rushers in NFL history. And, Garrett's at that point now where it's funny. On the one hand, Trent Williams is out here calling Myles Garrett a young guy, right? Because Trent Williams is our age almost. It's by those standards, Myles Garrett's pretty young. By most other people's standards, he's now at the age where elite pass rushers drop off, right? And maybe he's so elite that he'll buck that trend. But the point is, you have to at least be thinking about it, right? And, this has happened with offensive linemen as well. You can be thinking about it for 10 years, right? Jason Peters, Andrew Whitworth, Trent Williams, like these guys can go on for another decade beyond when you start thinking about it. But you do at least need to start thinking about it. Well, otherwise, you're not doing your due diligence as a general manager, as a team-building strategist.
So let's break down Garrett and Verse, their progression, potential regression, and then we'll transition to the Rams. All right, so let's get into that. So discuss what Sando, this has been out there a couple times, and I've done my own quick research on it as well. Brian Burke has said something similar from ESPN because he's looked at pass rush win rates and when those drop off, and then Sando's quick analysis here.
So Sando used a sort of specific subset of players. He's one of 11 all-time defensive linemen with 4 or more all-pro seasons during his 4th to 8th seasons, right? So it's a fairly, I don't want to say contrived selection of people, but it's an unusual bucket that he's putting these guys in, right? But that's your group. 11 people that have basically been absolute superstar defensive linemen during their absolute peaks, right? And then he says, here's how their average Pro Football Reference AV, approximate value, fared in the next 3 seasons, right? And that's the other element of this is that because of the way this contract is structured, the Rams now have Myles Garrett on what is effectively a 3-year, $99 million, $33 a year contract, right? And that's why he's doing the next 3 seasons, is that it's functionally a 3-year deal that the Rams now have Myles Garrett under contract for. So he says the AV over those next 3 seasons, the only one of those 11 players, or the only one of those 10 players prior to Garrett, that has not suffered a fairly major drop-off in production was Randy White, right, way back in the day for the Dallas Cowboys. Bob Lilly, Reggie White, Carl Eller, Deacon Jones, John Randall, Alan Page, Jack Youngblood, Jared Allen, and Warren Sapp all suffered fairly major to monstrous drop-offs in production.
And of all those players, Jared Allen's the closest, like the only one of the modern era.
He's the most modern.
The most modern. And so you gotta adjust for.
And he's the closest comp in terms of a guy who chased the sack record, was very close to the sack record, is the most modern. And then, he suffered a fairly precipitous drop-off in production in those 3 years that Garrett is going into. Now, I think Garrett is a better player than Jared Allen was, even at his peak, but it's an interesting data set because it's so clear. Like, again, the only guy who did not suffer a fairly major drop-off in those next 3 years is Randy White.
So then Brian Burke from ESPN has had something similar where they use ESPN pass rush win rates. I think they have 5 years or something of data, and they say, he's looking at percentage increase or decrease year, and it's something in the years 8 to 11 range. They start to see a little bit of a decline. Mm-hmm. I wanted to look at my numbers as well, my PVM metric, and see how do Garrett and Verse compare? If we could throw that up, here's what I've found as well. So Garrett being in a completely different tier of everyone else from a PVM perspective this year. This is my value metric that directly correlates to wins. Takes run defense into account, takes pass rush and the whole thing. Mm-hmm. Will Garrett regress a little bit over the next couple of years? The numbers would say that.
Yeah. Even
Will, do you have that graphic?
It's like the
to show
he's working on it. It's like the
I didn't hear it.
It's like the Matthew Stafford thing, right? Even coming from Defensive Player of the Year, coming from MVP, he's probably regressing next year just by virtue of it's not backing that up again. So
the 2 questions I had here, if you were looking at it numerically, that's Myles Garrett up top and Jared Verse down below. The colors are based off last year's teams, but by the way, they were kind of close. They were closer last year. Verse regressed
2024.
In 24. In 25, he regressed a little bit. Garrett went up.
Right.
So 2 of the questions I asked of the data, will they ever cross paths? Mm-hmm. And and when? And so the data has them crossing paths in 2028, which is right at the end of Garrett's 3-year deal. Which, if you were just off the top of your head saying, yeah, that makes sense, like year 5 and 6 of Jared Verse, or year 5 of Jared Verse, and then Myles Garrett getting into whatever year 12. That would make sense. But Garrett's drop-off here, because he's coming from such a high spot, this isn't like a cliff, right? And so this is the NFL. Let me just let me break down what is challenging about this for the NFL versus other sports. In other sports, like in baseball, all my baseball references, in baseball you found that hitters would peak at, say, age 27, 28, and then they would have this downward slope from there, right? And one of the differences in the challenges in comparing football and baseball and all these other sports is I think baseball basically has two positions. You have hitters and you have pitchers. Now, those hitters obviously play different positions, left field, shortstop, first base, but those positions aren't necessarily significant enough because the role is still hitting. And so you have this massive data set of hitters and massive data set of pitchers that age curves and progression curves, you could get some signal there. Mm-hmm. The challenge with football is you have 10 different positions, right? You have edge rushers, defensive tackles, corners, safeties, all different position groups, and you have some positions where players can go from corner to safety when they get older, or tackle to guard, or whatever it may be. Again, in baseball, you have a shortstop. He gets older, he loses a step, he might go to third, he might go to left field. That's true, but they still have to hit, right? And you're still analyzing the hitting. So my point is, age curves in football, I think, are really noisy. Like they're really challenging to just say this is definitely what's going to happen. And when you in interacting with NFL, front offices and everything, it's a challenging problem, right? It's not like, oh, this is easy, just trade Garrett before he gets old and whatever. Like Garrett's still going to be a superstar over the next few years, even though the data says, yes, of course there'll be some level of decline, but it's gradual enough. Like those numbers, PVM of 20 per game, like that's still superstar level over the next 2 to 3 years that we're talking for Myles Garrett. So if people are saying, hey, he's going to decline, that's fine. And because the underlying data I had, I'll just tell you what Claude said, because it's using the underlying data, and it just said, look, the elite edges in the data here, 18 or plus PVM per game, they're going to stay elite 60 to 70% of the time, even beyond what historically is a year 7 cliff for edge rushers. So that means, like last year may have been his career best or close to it, but even gradual decline, like Myles Garrett is still a superstar over the next 3 years. And then Jared Verse, the reason why Cleveland does this deal, he should continue to progress years 3, 4, and 5, of course. That's natural for most positions. And there might be a point in which they cross in 2028 at the end of the deal. And this is why I'm saying it's a win-win. The Rams are still, I don't care what, I know Sando's data says there'll be an extreme drop-off. I'm not seeing extreme drop-off. And I think the difference with Sando's data, first off, I don't necessarily trust AV that much.
Right.
And secondly, most of those guys are playing in the 70s and 80s and don't have the same training methods.
It's also a bunch of defensive tackles in there. It's a
defensive, right. It's not all the same deal. So I don't think the regression is going to be hard enough that the Rams are sitting there kicking themselves in 2 or 3 years. I think they're going to be thrilled with what they get for 3 years. And I think the Browns are going to be happy with what they get and what happens at the end of 3 years. So
this is the thing. I think the Rams can realistically expect to get an elite difference-making player for the 3-year contract that they've effectively signed up for. But from Brown's side, so what I'm saying is I think both perspectives, I think, are perfectly reasonable. That for a team, remember, the Rams were already the Vegas favorite to win the Super Bowl, right? So they are looking at this and saying, number one, even if we get 1 year of Myles Garrett that's even remotely like it was a year ago, that might be the difference between winning a Super Bowl and not right now for us, right? So it's immediately worth it in a sort of win now, chips all in type of world for the Rams if they get anything like the Myles Garrett from a year ago. But also, I think that they can realistically expect on a reasonable basis that for 3 years, because of what you've been saying and how good he is and age curves and all that kind of stuff, that they're going to get good use out of the 3 years. But also from a Cleveland perspective, I think it's reasonable to say we might need him to be that player in year 3 because we don't even have our young quarterback yet. Year 1's probably going to be a write-off. Year 2, so we need him to be at the same kind of level in the 3rd year of that deal. Is that likely? I think it's fair to say from Cleveland's perspective, he's probably not going to be the same guy at the point we really need him to be at his best. Or we could get a first-round pick, Jared Verse, another couple of picks as well. Should we cash in now? Because it's risky enough that he won't be the guy we need him to be when we need him to be that guy. Like, I think both those things can coexist at the same time and not like neither one of them be stupid for that opinion. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I don't think those are contradictory necessarily.
So then we get into, and let's discuss this piece. What are the differences in them as players? And we don't need to get into the whole. You had a really good breakdown on Twitter yesterday. I know we've been doing this for almost 15 years now. Pressures and sacks and what's worth it and what's valuable and what's not. We don't want to make disingenuous arguments and say, well, Jared Verse has like 5 fewer pressures than Myles Garrett. Therefore, it's like it's a like for like.
No,
this is a massive win for
the
Browns.
But I do think there was again, it's difficult to work out what's just a couple of people on Twitter and what's actually a trend. But I do think there was a trend when this happened of people immediately starting to minimize the type of player that Jared Verse is, right? Obviously, he's not Myles Garrett. I mean, nobody is, right? This is why it's like anybody being compared to Aaron Donald, right? It's unfair. Aaron Donald might be the best player that's ever played the game. It's insane to be like, well, how good is this guy as good as Aaron Donald? No, of course he isn't. Myles Garrett is a multiple-time Defensive Player of the Year. He is, I think, the best player in football if you go position agnostic to this thing and you say, forget value, just who's the best at what they do. Myles Garrett, I think, is the best player in the NFL. So, of course, Jared Verse is not as good as Myles Garrett. Neither is any other defensive end you want to talk about. But the question is, how good is he in his own right? And as I said, I think he would go for more than a first-round draft pick if you were just trying to trade for him independently, right? Jared Verse is a guy who won Rookie of the Year, who's racked up 160 pressures or something in the last couple of years, who's got an extremely good pass rush win rate, and who offensive linemen, like professional players, talk about as a different type of player in terms of the violence and the power that he plays the game with, right? I think there's some importance to that. Like the fact that Teron Armstead listed Jared Verse is one of the reasons he retired, right? Like I don't want to play that guy again, right? There's something to that, right? Does that make him the best player? No, but it's not an insignificant thing, right? While you're totting up pressure numbers and all those kinds of things, like a multiple-time Pro Bowler is out here telling you that, like, one of the reasons he did not want to spend another year suiting up and working out is because he did not want to go out there and block this dude again. So, he's a really, really good player in his own right and is, 25 years old, 2 years into a really good career so far. Like, he's a really good player, and we shouldn't minimize the player they're getting back.
So the two things that I think are true, as always, don't just look at sack totals and break down the players. Don't just look at pressure totals and break it, because those were the two discussions, right? People were on either end and be like, well, Jared Verse is a 6-sack player against Myles Garrett.
Yes.
Well, if you use pressures, they're very close over 2 years. This is why I know we don't work there anymore, but I think the PFF pass rush grade does a really good job because it factors in not just was it a pressure, not just was it a sack, how quickly, how often, how dominant are your wins? All of that's rolled in, and I still think it's the best metric out there for pass rushers. And honestly, the run defense grades are pretty good as well. Now, we've broken down when you roll them up to the 0 to 100, does it lose a little bit? Maybe. Mm-hmm. But the underlying data, I think, is still really strong. Yeah. And what you're getting as a player, Myles Garrett he's in a different tier as a pass rusher than anyone else.
Right.
Including Jared Verse. Mm-hmm. They're also different stylistically, right? When you're putting a scheme together and everything, they're going to be different stylistically. And what made Cleveland's defense so special last year is their ability to rush 4, play man on the back end, and I think that's what part of what the Rams are going to get, where they use a lot of stunts and twists, and they're shooting gaps and maybe setting up their rushers to create pressures. They have in their toolbox now, hey, we're just going to rush 4. Good luck. You have to account for 2 for Myles Garrett. That opens up Byron Young. That opens up Kobe Turner and Braden Fisk even more than it did when Jared Verse was there. Now, if they want to get creative, move Myles Garrett around, we know he's got the, crossover basketball move when you put him up over the center. Mm-hmm. He's rarely rushed against right tackles throughout his career, and we know that the NFL still hides their weaker pass blocker at right tackle. Not as much as they used to, but if you were going to hide someone, it'd be more at right tackle than left tackle. And so it does add a ton of flexibility to the Rams, and Garrett is just such a bear to block because speed, stride length, speed to power, he can win anyway. Run game-wise, Jared, in Verse as a pass rusher, he's more of a power rusher. He's more of a run through your face type of guy, collapse the pocket type of guy. Doesn't win around the edge as cleanly as guys like Garrett or some other rushers. But he's just a pure power rusher, and that gives offensive tackles something to think about, like you said, to the point where Teron Armstead's like, man, I don't. Given the choice of play another year or retire, I don't want to deal with that type of power. That's what Jared Verse brings to the table.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think a lot of people looked at his sack total and were like, "Oh, he's therefore not that good as a pass rusher." I don't think you can get the point of sort of pulling out the pressure number was not to say, "Hey, look, he's really close to Myles Garrett." It was to say it's more important that he's racked up this number of pressures than he has this number of sacks because of all the things we've been saying for the last 10 years. Sacks are a bad measure of pass rushing productivity and quality of pass rusher. Pressures are a better way of looking at it. And, okay, we can do even better than pressures, PFF, pass rushing
That would be my order of operations, right?
Pass rush, win rate, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But pressures are themselves kind of important. If you look at win rate over the last 2 years, he's still top 10. Like NFL-wide, right? Garrett is number 2, Aiden Hutchinson is number 1, Will Anderson Jr., Micah Parsons, blah, blah, blah. But Jared Verse is top 10 if you look at win rate. Forget pressure, number, total, gross. He's top 10 in terms of pass rush win rate over the last 2 years. So my point being, don't judge him by 12 sacks over 2 years and say, well, there's something missing from his game, right? He can't rush the passer, really. I mean, he really can, right? And, again, the other point I've been making for years is that people tend to assume that a guy that gets a lot of pressures but doesn't get a lot of sacks, there's like a missing element of his game, and it's, you can't finish. I think, generally speaking, that's not really a thing, right? Like somebody posted this yesterday. I was like, name for me the players that over a period of time, multiple years, have finished at a better rate than average, right? And, I mean, Arif took a stab at this, and, Arif is pretty good with large quantities of data, and he pulled out like 3 names that have basically had any kind of signal with that. And even those guys had a ton of pressure in the years where they sort of overachieved, right? The one guy that jumps to mind for me and has just like for always, Chandler Jones. Chandler Jones always finished at a higher rate than other people, right? For whatever reason, throughout his entire career, there did seem to be some kind of trait for Chandler Jones that he had a better ability to sack people than his data says he should have. But generally speaking, it's not a skill, right? I mean, obviously it is on an individual play basis. Hey, that guy made a play there. But generally, people are not capable of sacking at a higher rate than other people, right? It's noisy. It comes and goes. One year you're going to have a high pressure to sack rate. Another year you're going to have a low pressure to sack rate. Over a 5-year period, it's going to even out and you're going to be league average, right? Every now and again, there's a player or two who can finish at a higher rate. And there's definitely a couple of players that don't, right? There are players that definitely don't finish well. Brandon Graham, right? The classic poster boy for that. Brandon Graham, for his entire career, did not finish relative to other people. My point being, most of the time, if that's your argument, it's not going to be right.
The 2 styles of player, though, that might cheat pass rush win rate a little bit and might not convert to sacks are straight-up power bull rush types like Verse. And then Graham, maybe like the half-man wins where he's getting to the top of the pocket but not fully cleanly winning.
The one data point I wanted to look at in terms of its effect on that was players where a large proportion of their pressures are unblocked or cleanup. Like, are you able to finish because you're not actually being blocked at the time?
Yeah. I will say with Verse, and this shows up in the run game as well, because not to continue to talk up Garrett, like he's a high-end run defender as well. He's outstanding against the run. Block recognition, shedding, power, quickness, speed down the line. Garrett's awesome against the run. Verse is known as a hammer against the run. Different than Garrett, right? Hard edge setter, uses his hands really well, wrecks tight ends, even tackles when you're talking about setting the edge. Verse has, dating back to college, a ridiculously high number of missed tackles, though. That would be the one difference. So, again, if you were to look at production metrics for Verse, his run defense may have been lower last year. And I think a lot of that probably stemmed from he doesn't finish from a tackling perspective, falls off tackles, misses high. That happened at Florida State as well. Ridiculously high missed tackle rate. So Verse is really disruptive, both as a pass rusher and from a run defense perspective. but he's more a set up your teammates type of guy. Sure. And doesn't finish, and he doesn't finish as many plays.
My overall point, though, would be he gets so much pressure and has so much disruption that I would expect him to get more sacks than averaging 6 a year, right? Like that's my main point.
Yeah, I agree.
Like, so if you're judging him on, he's only getting 6 sacks a year, I don't think he's that guy. I think that's dramatically underselling him, and I think generally just all of the way the data works and his profile, I would expect him to average more than 6 sacks a year.
All right, so yeah, I wanted to, because I dove into the film a little bit on both guys, and wanted to bring something more to the table than like this guy's elite, this guy's good. They're both very good players. Garrett's in another tier. Love what the Browns are getting in Verse.
Yeah.
What are the Rams? Not so much like what are they getting now in Garrett, but now what does this mean for the Rams? Because they were already the Super Bowl favorites before this trade.
Yeah, they were. So on the one hand, it's classic Rams. They're just, F them picks. They're going to get superstar player. They're going all in again, blah, blah, blah. And there's an element of truth to that. But I think people just focusing on that are dismissing how well this fits in, like how responsible a move this is for them. Because as we said, they are effectively, because of the way the contracts work and the Browns have paid out a ton of bonus money, they are effectively inheriting Myles Garrett on what amounts to a 3-year, $33 million a year, $99 million contract, right? Which ranks like 8th or something in terms of APY among edge rushers. And if and when Jared Verse, his contract ends up getting done, he's going to be asking for $45 million a year going forward, right? So you're actually getting kind of a bargain out of Myles Garrett. Now, do you have to re-up Myles Garrett at some point during this thing? Maybe. Can you let him play out that 3-year deal and then move him on or whatever? So, these things have to be worked out. But on the face of it right now, you are adding the best player in the NFL to your roster, right? Okay, you're losing Jared Verse in the process, but you're upgrading effectively from Jared Verse to the best player in football at that position. It's not breaking the bank because you're bringing him in on a deal that's effectively a bargain for that position. Okay, it's more than Jared Verse was on, but it's a hell of a lot cheaper than top of the market now, which Garrett himself only set recently. Like, he reset the market, and now you're getting it at significantly below market value because the Browns have already paid out a ton of that bonus money. And because, again, you're on this 3-year timescale, if we get 1 year of Matthew Stafford and then he retires, it works fine. If you get 2 years of Matthew Stafford and then we transition to Ty Simpson and Ty Simpson is good, it still works out well because you get the final year of Myles Garrett. You get to decide how much he's got left, and even if that's his last year, it still makes sense. So I don't really see a downside to this for the Rams other than the fact that it was, pretty expensive. A first, a second, a third, plus Jared Verse.
I mean, I'll talk about the Rams long term for a second. In the short term, though, the upgrade to Garrett, just makes them so dangerous defensively. You mentioning that essentially makes him the number 8 edge rusher from an APY perspective. The contracts that they have a decision to make on Puka Nacua.
And by the way, Jared Verse, it's like this. It's not like they were at some point they were going to have to pay Jared Verse if they'd kept him. So you're factoring in the fact that Garrett's contract is relatively cheap market wide. B, at some point we're going to have to make
Verse
Jared
was going to start making more Verse was going to make more, maybe not an APY versus Garrett, but for the Rams.
Yes,
and maybe even an APY versus.
And
Garrett.
Look, the way you could have, when Jared Verse's deal was signed, like his salary cap number would be cheap for a while. So it's complicated, right? Like, Garrett right now is on extremely low salary cap numbers for the Rams for this contract. Like, he's barely making a dent against that salary cap for a while. When they re-upped Jared Verse, his contract would be pretty team-friendly salary cap-wise for a while as well. But the point is, like, at some point you are going to be on the hook for a ton of this money long-term for Jared Verse. So it's not like – generally my point is simply it's quite a good deal financially and salary-wise for the Rams, and you have to at least factor in what they were going to have to pay somewhere down the line to Jared Verse. And it's not this all-in for now move, right? It actually makes sense long-term as well.
I'll tell you where they're fragile long-term, and I did break this down earlier this offseason. They have only drafted 11 times over the last 2 years.
Sure.
So when you talk about the volume drafting,
they stopped doing that.
They stopped, right? In 2023, they had more than 10, I can't even count all these in a quick, they had like 13 picks in 2023. They had about 10 in 2024, 2022 they had a bunch, 2021 they had a bunch. So in all of the years that they didn't have the ones, they volume drafted.
Yep.
That's how they balanced it out. They have not been volume drafting. And of the 11 picks the last 2 years, 2 of them are tight ends, one's a running back, right? Like, so you're just not replenishing with high value positions. So part of the strategy has always been, well, if you give up the ones and you're going to get superstars, great, we'll hit on day 3. And there's been no team has hit on day 3 quite like the Rams, right? So there, 2 things are true. They've been the very best by my numbers, absolutely the best drafting team since 2017 in non-quarterback world, and it's actually not even that close. It's the Rams. Over the last 5 years, it's the Rams. That includes Puka. That includes Kobe Turner. That includes Byron Young, who's become a star. They continue to hit on day 3. They hit on Cooper Kupp almost 10 years ago now. I mean, they have a long track record and a history. But it does feel like these last 2 draft classes, because they're thinner, they might get fewer contributors there. And their next phase, their Ty Simpson phase, it's going to be a little bit more challenging. Kind of like so there's a chance. So first off, as good as you've been drafting for the last 10 years, there's nothing that says you'll definitely continue that.
Yeah.
Secondly, you don't have the same buffer that you had because you don't have multiple draft classes of 10-plus picks. You're working with 11 in 2 years. That's not a lot. And again, 1 on a quarterback, 2 on a tight end, 1 on a running back, right? So they haven't replenished high-value positions over the last 2 years. Now you're out a 1, a 2, and a 3, each of the next 3 years. The margin for error is just a little bit tighter for the Rams. I'm not saying they can't do it. Like, it's not all in, but it's a big 2 years here to capitalize. The benefit I do believe, though, Garrett being somewhat cheap for the Rams, you got to pay Puka, you got to pay 4 offensive linemen potentially, you got a decision to make on Byron Young, you got to pay Kobe Turner. They have a lot of players that they need to pay, and if they do, they'll have a really good, strong nucleus over the next few years as they're hoping to sprinkle in these other draft picks. But I do believe they're more fragile than they were in what everybody called the F them picks years, which weren't. Yes. They weren't F them picks. They were first rounders equal veterans, high volume elsewhere. They've been first round for veterans and now low volume, and this could bite in 2028 is what I'm saying.
That's the thing. I would be surprised if they continued that as a trend. Because it seemed like such an integral part of that FDM picks period, right? Like from the point effectively where they started to trade away first-round draft picks, they used their first-rounder on Todd Gurley in 2015. They used their first-rounder on Jared Goff in 2016. From that moment on, they start trading away these first-round picks. And every single one of those years, they drafted at least 8 times, right? And often way more than that. Like even the year where multiple years, in fact, where their first pick didn't come along until the 3rd round, they still drafted 10 multiple times. Like the year where they multiple times where their first pick in the draft came up in the 3rd round, they still drafted more than 8 times, right? And obviously you only start off with 7 draft picks theoretically. So it was a huge part of this. And then the last 2 years, they've drafted 6 times and then 5 times, right? So that's a massive downturn over their general trend in that period of time. I would be surprised if that was a long-term trend and wasn't just driven by maybe this was a draft that Ty Simpson obviously is a sort of unique element of this draft. They just didn't find trade partners or whatever to trade back.
Jordan mentioned, too, the fact that they got Simpson allowed them to feel good about giving up a future one, right? Because they have their quarterback. They're not worried about the quarterback class next year. Right. The Browns are worried about the quarterback class and having more.
So my point being, I would be surprised, and they're already down on picks next year, obviously, because of these trades. So they're in a world where right now, on paper, it looks like the 3rd straight year of this, they're going to pick less often. Now, that doesn't always happen, though. You can make these trades and get more draft picks. And
right.
That's what they did for a lot of these years. But if it happened for a 3rd straight year, I agree, that would be concerning because it's not like you can rely on everyone. Like part of having such a good hit rate on these lower round draft picks is taking a lot of swings, right? There's a lot of useless players that they drafted in this run of having a million draft picks, but that's part of how you do it, right? Is you draft 15 times and you'll hit on a couple of day 3 picks, right? If you draft 2 times, you won't, because the chances of you actually identifying the one good player in day 3 is not that great. So I agree. If they don't reverse that trend in 2027 in the draft, I would start to get pretty concerned by the impact that will have. But I'm not yet worried by it.
I need someone better at this than me to go back through the butterfly effect of the almost moves by the Rams and the actual moves by the Rams, going all the way back to them almost trading up for Teterow and McMillan.
Right.
To the 2025 draft, they wanted to trade up to 8 with the Panthers. Panthers say no, they take McMillan. The Rams are sitting there at 26. They trade out. So instead of trading up to 8, they trade out of the first round, get next year's first rounder from the Falcons, turn that into Ty Simpson, which then gives them enough confidence that, hey, we don't have to worry about next year's quarterback class. We're going to go get Myles Garrett. And that's not even including the fact that the previous year they tried to trade up for Brock Bowers. I don't know this specifically. I've said this before, and you used the phrase stars and scrubs for the Rams previously. I know a lot of teams use these rubrics, and we've seen this. Bucky Brooks has talked about it. You need number of how many blues you need on your team, or purples, or whatever color scheme that they use. You need this number of players, to be in this championship level. I really believe that they're working off this rubric where it's like, we just want to have this certain number of stars on our team. And in this case, they went from star to superstar, right? They went from Jared versus star to superstar Myles Garrett. But it does feel like so much of Les Snead and what the Rams are doing is saying, Brock Bowers, blue chip, let's go get him. Teterow, McMillan, probably had him in a blue chip category. Let's go get him. And a lot of it's counterintuitive with the analytics of, do the volume thing. But they do the volume later in the draft, but they want to have the blue chips as well. Right. And it's worked extremely well for them.
I do think a huge part of this is finding those those day 3 players that are on absolute peanuts for that rookie contract. It is, they've got contracts coming down the pipe that are going to eat into this a lot, but this is a team, for as much as people are going to talk about the Rams as being all in, right? And when they say all in, they tend to talk about it in sort of reckless terms. But for a team that's paid Matthew Stafford, that's brought in Myles Garrett, that's just traded for Trent McDuffie and then paid him, they're throwing around big contracts on established long-term veterans, and yet their salary cap outlook, for the next however long you want to project it, is in really good shape. Like, this is not a team backed into a corner salary cap-wise. It's like they don't look like the Saints did, when they were like throwing everything all in to try and get one more championship for Drew Brees before he inevitably retired, and they knew they were going to have to blow the whole thing up. Theoretically, they're playing with the same kind of time frame, right? Like, Matthew Stafford's got a year or 2 left, right? When he goes, it's probably the end, but they are approaching it in a completely different way to the Saints. They're not maxing out the credit card for that final year of Stafford. They are trying to do an orderly succession plan and still be competitive, right? And that, I think you have to applaud. Like, it's not as reckless as people, I think, are going to frame this.
No, and even when they went all in 2021, and things fell apart in 22, and then they had a bit of a hard reset in 2023. Remember, it was Donald. All they had was Aaron Donald and Matthew Stafford and a whole bunch of rookies. But that's when they found Puka Nacua. That's when Kyron Williams established. So you do have to have a –
and that's where –
and that might be 2028, right, for the Rams, where there's a bit of a reset year. But they've come out of the reset year pretty strong, obviously. And now, as we're talking about superstars, I know you wanted to discuss.
Yeah.
Sam, there's a non-zero chance, as our nerd friends would say.
Yeah.
A non-zero chance that the great Aaron Donald could come out of retirement. And who would not want to see, besides the Seahawks, 49ers, and Cardinals, who would not want to see Aaron Donald and Myles Garrett playing football side by side?
Yeah. So it was it was one of those things that you just thought as the Myles Garrett trade happened, you're like, man, wouldn't it be cool if Aaron Donald and retired and those two played next to each other? And then it was like, obviously other people had that thought as well, and people with direct contact with Aaron Donald had that thought. So you're like, well, let's text him, find out, right? And so people like Pat McAfee and Jordan Schultz or whatever, like everyone starts texting Myles Garrett, and unlike you assume it just gets shut down, it's like, nah, I'm happy in retirement. Aaron Donald left the door open to it. He was like, so he then starts posting Instagram videos of him working out and being like, stay ready or whatever. It might happen. It might actually happen that Aaron Donald unretires and we get to see Aaron Donald and Myles Garrett playing next to each other. Now, look, it's presumably not peak Aaron Donald at the, he's had a few years out of the game now. However, he's only 35 years old and is obviously in phenomenal shape and was not like he had declined when he walked away from the game. Like, Aaron Donald, I think, is a guy that could walk onto the field after a few years out of the game and still be an absolute beast, particularly if you suddenly put Myles Garrett next to him and say, oh, by the way, you can't double team him anymore. Or you can, but that means Myles Garrett's now one-on-one, so good luck with that. I mean, dude, look, obviously the 49ers and the Cardinals and the Seahawks don't want to see this. I want to see that. For science, I want to see that. I mean, I was thinking about this the other day. What is the best defensive tackle, edge rusher combination that you've seen in the last 15 years?
Jeez, man, I don't know. I mean,
like one of the best combinations I can remember that worked in tandem was Justin Smith and Aldon Smith, right? Those two had a phenomenal ability to work in tandem and on stunts and stuff. Like Justin Smith would torpedo the line, and Aldon Smith would just wrap around and make the play. That I'm not sure they're the most talented, but they might have had the best impact of any duo over the last 15 years or whatever. Point is, whatever it is, I think is better.
Donald's best edge rusher that he's played with, there was a point where we said he's so disruptive. Leonard Floyd, going back to this pass rush grade. This is how we told the story. The players would have the same PFF pass rush grade,
right,
but then have career highs in sacks, meaning they're probably getting more opportunities or cleanup sacks, whatever. And he was the sack creator. Dante Fowler had a 15-sack season. Leonard Floyd had 10-sack seasons. Those are the best guys that he played with on the edge, right?
Yeah.
He never really had. Vaughn. I mean, him and Vaughn, actually.
Yeah, for that period of time.
For that year or half year or whatever.
Right.
That's got to be it. But Vaughn was toward the end of his career. Still pretty good, though. But that has to be it.
But I would say, it's total speculation what Aaron Donald would be right now coming out of retirement. But I would guess
Is it, though?
Yeah.
He's looking like he's in pretty good shape.
I would guess that this version of Myles Garrett plus this version of Aaron Donald would probably be better than that version of Donald plus that version of Von Miller.
Even if you got Donald for 20 snaps a game.
Yeah. And again, I think there's huge power to the idea of what if you can't double him anymore, right? Like he never, for the last 10 years of his career, he spent the entire time being double teamed, right? He used to spend his time watching tape to try and get a signal for the play, the one or two plays a game, where by scheme, by alignment, he would not be double teamed because he knew, that's my chance. That's the play I get to go get a sack because otherwise I'm being, taken out of the game. This might be the first time in his career since he was a rookie where that's not the case anymore.
I asked Claude to create an NFT of Aaron Donald because remember that was a thing for a while. Can't do it. Can't use his likeness. It created the ugly. It's like I could do artwork though. Do you want to see the artwork that came out here?
Not really.
It's pretty awful. I don't know what this is. It's so bad. Anyway,
what the hell is that?
Because remember they created the NFT of Donald. We're not going to give out trophies anymore. We're going to give out NFTs for Donald.
Yeah,
it's unbelievable.
Point is, I would love to see that. I would love to see Aaron Donald and Myles Garrett next to each other playing this year. I would love it.
That is the deepest of deep dives. I agree. Garrett and Donald. Oh, look at that. That is the worst thing I've ever seen. What is that?
I don't know.
Now I'm embarrassed for the AI.
AI slop.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Oh, it's sloppier than slop. We got to talk A.J. Brown trade, too.
Yeah.
Right now, FanDuel customers can bet $5, get $250 in bonus bets if first bet wins. That's right. Turn $5 into $250 in bonus bets just for getting started. And when every possession matters in the playoffs, FanDuel makes it easy to get closer to the action. From player props on your favorite stars to all the tools you need to back them up, FanDuel puts player research right at your fingertips so you can check stats, trends, and matchups all in one place. Make your picks with confidence. It's everything you need all in one app, so don't miss your shot. Head to FanDuel.com/3030 to get started. FanDuel, play your game. 21 plus in select states. For Kansas and affiliation with Kansas Star Casino. 18 plus in DC, Kentucky, or Wyoming. First online real money wager only. $5 first deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets, which expire 7 days after receipt. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER, 1-800-MY-RESET. Call 1-888-789-7777. Visit ccpd.org/chat in Connecticut. Visit mdgamblinghelp.org in Maryland. Visit gamblinghelplinema.org. Call 800-327-5050 in Massachusetts. Call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY in New York. And call 877-770-7867 in Louisiana. Great. Anything else on Donald, Garrett, Verse, Rams?
Win-win trade.
Win-win.
Win-win-win if we get Aaron Donald back on the field as well. So I'm here for all of it.
By the way, that puts the Rams, who are already the Super Bowl favorite, now plus 550 to win the Super Bowl. So their odds increased. Closest team beyond them is plus 1,000 all per FanDuel. Mm-hmm. All right, A.J. Brown, finally traded.
Yep.
They waited till the June 1st deadline. As we said earlier, 2028 first rounder is the compensation for the Philadelphia Eagles, which means, and by the way, Howie Roseman, the NFL talks a lot about this like discounted future first. Howie and the Eagles, our old friend Brad Spielberger, Jason Fitzgerald of Over the Cap, they wrote about this years ago.
Yeah.
That, hey, a pick is a pick. Howie says a pick is a pick. The discount thing, it does feel like the NFL has some of these like. Traditionally,
it was that future, like you would discount a future pick by a round for every year, right? So a first round pick in this year or a second round pick this year is worth a first round pick next year, et cetera, right? That was the sort of the rule of thumb. But as you said, analytics and people crunching the numbers have said for years, like that's folly. There's an edge to be like it's a pick, right? Now, I do think a big part of that is job security.
It's all based off job security.
Right.
That's all it is. Like a player's not more valuable now than he is a year from now. Your job is 1 year closer to you're 1 year closer to being fired.
And this is why I think
the problem.
There's some compounding effect here to the idea that like the best teams of doing some creative
Stay
things.
Good.
Well, stay good, and they're the ones with the security, right?
Yeah.
Les Snead can do whatever the hell he wants at this point, and nobody's going to call him on it because he's got a great track record and he's got job security. Howie is being talked about as like a god. The guy can do whatever he likes. You know what I mean? So he can take risks that, first-time general managers can't take. Because if it goes wrong, they're screwed, right?
Yeah.
If they take the swing and they miss, they're fired immediately, right? If Howie takes a swing and misses, this doesn't matter. It's Howie. That's, we gets one screw up. It's a mulligan, right? He'll go back, he'll do something different, it'll be great, right? So Les and Howie can make these kind of moves that other people probably can't make because of the security that they built up. And there's a compounding effect to that.
And that's why I said when you talk about teams in different life cycles, there's teams with different levels of desperation. There's GMs that feel like they're fighting for their job in year 3 and they have to make more desperate moves, and you take advantage of those. And I'm not saying the Patriots are one of those teams or anything. I'm just saying Howie's ability to both look short and long term all at the same time is good.
But it gives him the freedom to get the sort of edge there, because I do think that it's probably true that no team wanted to give up a 2027 first-round draft pick for A.J. Brown. But I also think from Howie's perspective, he can then go, well, I just want a first-round pick. I don't care where it is. And then the Patriots are willing to give up a 2028 first, and Howie's like, yeah, done.
Yeah.
Right? As opposed to, I'll take a second-round pick because nobody will give me my first.
And there is an advantage, I would say, from the Patriots' perspective, because, okay, you have your 27, and it's like 2 years of planning out, knowing that you don't have your 28 pick, and then you build around it, right? Okay, we're not going to have our first-round pick. We can start to accumulate more picks in that draft, whatever it may be, to balance it. So let's look at this from the Eagles' perspective. Generally, I am a huge fan of you trade a 1 for a player, you get years out of him, and then you trade him for a 1.
Yeah.
I'm a huge fan. Now, there's a caveat here. They're on the hook for a lot of A.J. Brown money, so it's not a freebie necessarily. But I came out of the 2022 draft.
That's why they wanted a first-round pick back, right?
Yes, and I came out of the 2022 draft. Remember, weak draft, 1 quarterback. Trayvon Walker goes number 1 overall. I said the most valuable pick in round 1 was pick 18 that the Eagles traded. I believe it was 18 for A.J. Brown. Traded him to the Titans. They got a 1 and a 3 is what they traded for A.J. Brown. Now, in hindsight, Aiden Hutchinson's probably the most valuable player out of that first round, right? Aiden Hutchinson, Kyle Hamilton, and A.J. Brown. Probably the 3 most valuable first-round picks
Right.
of that draft. Money-wise, obviously, the first contract guys, but A.J. Brown's right there. It immediately brought the Eagles to a Super Bowl, and then they won one 2 years later. They're thrilled with that trade. And then at the end of his contract, as things have run out, or toward the end of his contract, as things have soured a little bit, you get a 1 for him. I think overall it's good. It's very good business by the Eagles. Mm-hmm. But there's risk attached to it, obviously, because A.J. Brown was big part responsible for 2 of the best years of Ryan Tannehill's career, the 2 most productive years of Ryan Tannehill's career in Tennessee. He shows up to Philadelphia. Jalen Hurts was not Jalen Hurts at that point. He was he had just started like 5 games in 2021. We didn't know what Jalen Hurts was going to be. All of a sudden, his production is outstanding. He's never really lived the life without A.J. Brown as a full-time starter. A.J. Brown has, I think, elevated 2 quarterbacks to this point, right? And we'll see what he does with Drake May as he gets a little bit older. So that would be the risk. And now you are trying to replace A.J. Brown in the aggregate between Marquise Brown, Dontavian Wicks, and the 2, the Eli Stowers, Mekhi Lemon draft picks, right? You're just throwing a lot of bodies at this. It's a new system. They're asking Hurts to do different things. So there's risk attached to this because A.J. Brown, even though things didn't finish strong in Philadelphia, has been not only a highly productive player, but he has elevated the production of multiple quarterbacks from what we've seen. The wit-outs of A.J. Brown are as good as it's like him and Tyreek Hill over the last decade of the biggest quarterback elevators, I think that you would say.
Yeah, I mean, from the Eagles' perspective, clearly the relationship with A.J. Brown had broken down, right? Like, you've heard it with both him and Jalen Hurts talking about how their relationship is kind of soured, and they're both pretty careful to say things like, we're cool, but yeah, we're not as tight as we used to be, that kind of thing. But that on its own, as being articulated publicly, is pretty bad, right? That's generally about as sour as you're going to hear a quarterback wide receiver talking about each other. They're supposed to be each other's best friend type of thing. So the fact that it's gotten that bad, I thought last year was the first year where you saw sort of visible signs of A.J. Brown's frustration to the point where it affected his play. I never really bought into the idea of, oh, look, he's reading a book on the sideline, therefore things are toxic. It's like, yeah, but he's still out there balling, so who cares? Last season, I think there were a lot of plays where I was like, did he really try and get that as hard as he could have? His numbers were way down. Like he's a guy who for his career has averaged over or right at 2.5 yards per route run. Last season, he dipped below 2 for the first time, right? So you're talking, that's a fairly significant percentage chunk chopped out of his production on a per snap basis. Not even forget the overall numbers like the yardage, blah, blah, blah. Just on a per route basis, his production went way down. And I think you could see it on tape where he kind of mailed it in on some plays. So from the Eagles' perspective, I think you can see, all right, we've probably burned the bridge with A.J. Brown. It's time to cash in. The risk being he's been a pretty important crutch for Jalen Hurts and this offense. What happens when we trade that guy away? Now, you then add to the fact that the guys they're replacing him with are very different stylistically, and we're pivoting this whole offense in a way that's generally risky for Philadelphia. But you can understand why they're doing it, right? Like it appears they burned the bridge anyway, so you should be cashing in. And to get a first-round pick of any description back for that type of player at his age, given the decline, is really good business. Then from New England's point of view, it's like, well, theoretically, A.J. Brown is an elite player still. And he's 28 years old. Okay, he'll be 29 in like a month or whatever. But, that's still in a receiver's prime. Is there any reason he won't bounce back, given last season being a weird downturn year? The only reason you would come up with is this idea that he might have a degenerative knee issue, which was talked about a little bit by Elliot Wolf, acknowledged effectively that, yeah, there's something with his knee, but we have it cleared medically, et cetera. That would be the only reason you would say why a 28 going on 29-year-old would not have a bounce-back season after one uncharacteristically unproductive season.
Yeah, I want to go through what A.J. Brown was last year because that was well laid out by you. There was some plays that really stood out last year, both good and bad. Because you talked about like how Hurts was using him as a crutch and everything. Remember the Minnesota play it was 4th and 4. Remember Hurts had like 15 completions for 300-something yards in that game against Minnesota. Crazy explosives. It was a 4th and 4. A.J. Brown ran. I don't even know what the route was. It looked like it maybe should have been a quick out, but he just kind of like ran into the defender.
Right.
But then scramble drill adjustment, gets behind the defense, and it's a long touchdown on 4th and 4. Hurts just heaved it up. So there were some weird plays where it's like, I don't know what the route is. Well, I went back through a lot of A.J. Brown's film last year, and he's actually awesome at scramble drill plays and, kind of like baiting. He looks like he's just kind of like giving up, and he baits the corner, and then he works back, especially along the sideline. He's really good at that. But there were a lot of plays last year. It felt like in off coverage, corners weren't respecting his speed. So this I'm gonna say things both ways here. There was a lot of double moves. He was wide open last year and got missed, and that affected his production. Then there was a lot of plays where I felt like,
and presumably also level of frustration.
Right. And so there's a lot of double moves where he's open, he's getting overthrown or just not getting the ball or whatever it may be. Ball's way off. Then there's other plays where it did feel like the corners weren't respecting his speed as much and just jumping routes underneath. And so I think part of the A.J. Brown thing is, can he and then this was the other notable thing. The last 4 targets of his Eagles career all fell incomplete. 2 of them, and it was the Niners playoff game. 2 of them were like the gator-armed, just misses, and then a drop, just a wide open drop. Remember the dig route that ended their season pretty much, and so didn't end great. And so my question with A.J. Brown is not, can he be good and productive? I think whether the knee's slowing him down a little bit, or whatever it may be, because he used to also have plays. Remember when we used to talk about the dudes in Tennessee? He would take the slants to the house, right? He would not only win down the field with speed and physicality, but he would win after the catch. And that wasn't really there last year. Not that this is a yak-centric type of Philly offense. My question is going to be, how will he age? And what I think is interesting is they asked Josh McDaniels, like, have you ever had a player like A.J. Brown? And you would think he would say, well, Randy Moss, right? He was an outside receiver, and A.J. Brown's an outside receiver. That's the best. But he mentioned Gronk as the closest player. And I wonder if the Patriots have more of a plan to move A.J. Brown around, use him as a big slot at times. Remember, they used that their Haas play, right? Their famous Haas play where they'll put the running back's going to be outside the X receiver, and all of a sudden the X receiver's playing the slot, the Gronk role, and Gronk's running a seam or seam option. I do wonder if they'll use the big-bodied physicality over the middle a little bit more, because he does that pretty well. Like, he's so physical at the catch point. So I think they could find a way to help. Again, he's not old, but his game looked like it was aging a touch last year. I still think he's very good, but the yak was down, the explosiveness was down, and corners weren't respecting him as much. And I do wonder if he'll age better as a move-around type of guy, big slot, and do the X stuff as well, which, again, he's still capable of.
Problem is, again, there's always confounding variables, right? Like, to what extent was the frustration impacting his game last year, the fact that he wasn't trying as hard effectively? To what extent was the fact that this offense became so stale and so predictable impacting everything, right? And then to what extent is the knee injury? And then on top of all that, to what extent is the knee injury a permanent part of that? Or was he just, dealing with it in particular last year, and then this year it's termed degenerative, but that doesn't mean it's like always a problem. It just means that long term it's going to be an issue. So, can he get back to being healthy this year? And so the whole thing, you've got sort of 3 different elements of what explains the downturn. And also, to be clear, it's never a good thing for a receiver to basically get upset, throw his toys out of the pram, and quit on the team effectively, right? But it doesn't necessarily mean that you can't project a bounce back in the next place, right? Like a change of scenery might resolve that. The fact that it's possible to happen again is its own problem, and
that's literally what happened with Randy Moss when he went from the Raiders to the Patriots.
It's not a good thing that Randy Moss effectively quit on the Raiders, right? But it doesn't mean that, therefore, as the Patriots, you should never take that guy.
This might sound crazy, because as soon as Moss went to the Patriots, he scores 23 touchdowns and breaks the record. But at the time, the Patriots gave up a 4th rounder.
Right.
And it wasn't like a resounding, I can't believe you got away with this.
Yeah.
Some people certainly said that, but at the time, people were like, you're getting this guy, and he quit on Andrew Walter and the Raiders,
Right.
and he's a cancer, and he's this and he's that. And it's like, no, it's an unbelievable buy low for a fourth rounder to see if the change of scenery works. And
Right.
it did, at least for 3 years until he got traded again.
Exactly. So the fact that even if you wanted to be like, okay, he's 100% healthy and everything last year was basically A.J. Brown getting upset and quitting on the team, right? Like, that's not a good thing. It doesn't speak well to A.J. Brown that happened. But it does mean that you can say, okay, but if Drake May is a way better quarterback as a baseline right now than Jalen Hurts, and if the offense is going to be good, and if it's not going to be, pigeonholed into this weird, predictable world, like if all of the things that were pissing him off in Philadelphia are now taken off the table, well, then he'll be better. Like, it still doesn't speak well to him that it happened, but it does mean that you can project all of those problems to disappear if that's the problem. Now, the more concerning thing is the fact that they acknowledge that there is this issue with his knee, and we have no idea to what extent that is affecting him, and when that's going to be an issue and how much it's going to be an issue and those things. Because, I think a lot of last year was down to that, right? The fact that he got pissed off and down tools effectively. And I would expect all of that to go away this year. What I don't know is how much of it was the knee injury and what kind of capacity he has anymore to be the player that he used to be.
Yeah, I'm not sure. That one's tough to project,
right.
I would say. I think for New England,
but that's the big variable as to whether this is worth it for New England or not. Like if he's able to bounce back physically, and even if his knee injury, even if it means he retires at 33 instead of 35, right? Then who cares? But if the knee injury is already having that effect, and he's the player that he was last year, not the player that he was 2 years ago, then they probably overpaid.
The effect for New England, though, I think is significant. You have
potentially,
even if he's 80% of what he's been at his best, he's wide receiver 1 on that team.
Sure,
I think he could play X. I think he can move him around, and I think he can age well with his physicality. Concerned that he was going to be what he was 3 years ago, I think that's okay. Romeo Doubs being the number 2, I think is also really good because that's what Doubs is. I think he's a good number 2. It also gives you this flexibility of Mac Hollins is still on the roster, Kayshon Boutte, Kyle Williams. I think New England, as everyone gets bumped down the depth chart, they actually have a surplus of wide receivers now. That's what one potentially impact player does for you. You have this surplus. They can already start to recoup some of that draft capital. Obviously not a 1, but you start to recoup some draft capital over the next couple of years, maybe with a Kayshon Boutte or a desperate team that needs a Mac Hollins. Is he redundant to A.J. Brown as a potential X receiver? Mac Hollins can still play, by the way. He's still good.
Boutte apparently has already talked about being open to a trade at this point. So, again, somebody asked me in the instant reaction thing, if the Patriots were done making moves, as in bringing in somebody, I was like, I think it's more likely that somebody like Boutte heads in the other direction than they bring in anybody more. And that apparently has already come up as a possibility.
So I think they have a chance to, get a third or whatever that is, right? Get some more draft capital. The other part, when you go to their draft, right? We said at the time, they got Caleb Lomu in round 1. I see him as a developmental offensive tackle. He steps into a world where Will Campbell's the starting left tackle. Morgan Moses is the starting right tackle. He could probably take over as right tackle starting next year. I think New England has put these pieces together. Again, assuming A.J. Brown is a star. Mm-hmm. They've put these pieces together well.
Yeah.
Where they've got the future-proofing of the offensive line. They've got receiver depth now. They have potentially their most impact receiver since who knows when, and it's year 3 of Drake May, and they're coming off a Super Bowl. Schedule's harder, might not have a better record, might not have a better result this year, but I think they've certainly improved on offense, in an offense that was really good already last year until the playoffs.
Yeah, I think A.J. Brown can still be very, very good. I would be worried about that knee. It's tough to project that kind of thing. You've got to lean on the doctors and what they say. But if they think it's not going to be a thing that stops him being the player he was 2 years ago, this year, then it's a massive upgrade for this team. And again, sequentially now, they went from the first year of Drake May, everything around him was an absolute joke. Last year, everything around him had already gotten to a pretty solid level. It wasn't great, but it was okay. The offensive line was solid. The receiving core was solid. Neither one of them was outstanding. And when solid runs into elite-level defenses in the playoffs, solid loses, right? And that's, I think, what happened. And now you've upgraded them again. The receiving core should be better, with A.J. Brown added to it, even if he's not the player that he was a couple of years ago. But certainly if he is, it's significantly better. And then the offensive line should be better. Again, even if Caleb Lomu doesn't have to play this year, Elijah Vera-Tucker coming in, Jared Wilson moving to center, which is a more natural position for him as well. The overall starting five should be better this year than it was last year. So for the second year in a row, they've upgraded both of the supporting cast pillars around Drake May. And even if last year represented, a high watermark for his play, he might be better this year overall because the supporting cast around him is better. So I think you have to credit the Patriots for saying, look, when he first came into the lineup, they might have had the worst receiver room and offensive line in the NFL at the same time, right? Last year, neither one of those things was true. And then this year, they might both be relative strengths.
It shows that I think sometimes it feels challenging to make that type of overhaul on paper in a year or two.
You can do things quick.
But it's doable, right? Even when we say, teams are signing their own and teams aren't letting guys hit free agency. Well, you get Dobbs at free agency for a reasonable price as a 2, and you get creative to get a wide receiver 1. Is there some risk attached? Absolutely. But, they've done it, and they've spent 2 firsts on offensive tackles, and all of a sudden you get the great Morgan Moses, which is always part of getting your offensive line back in order. I think the Patriots have made some good moves there. They're also that team that, as a 14-win team where you say, I think they're probably a better team and might have a worse record.
Yeah.
But I think that's a good move overall for New England. I think it's the right move for Philadelphia given where they are. It's riskier in that I don't know what the replacements are. Like, I think it's fine long term. I don't know if the short term you're getting better offensively though.
Well, it's also because you're
unless
pairing
the scheme offsets all of it.
It's because you're not just pairing. Okay, again, presumably the bridges were burned with A.J. Brown, so getting a first round pick back for him is fantastic business. It's what you absolutely should be doing. And okay, fine, even regardless of the salary cap implications, but you're also pairing it with this clear shift in offensive philosophy with Sean Mannion coming in with the focus on players that win over the middle as opposed to players that win in that X receiver role that A.J. Brown has been employed with them for the last few years. Like you're doing all this at the same time, right? You're shifting away from your crutch player, but also shifting offensive philosophy, presumably to try and get the best version of Jalen Hurts you can get. But it does make that entire thing risky, right? Like that's inherently a risky thing to do, to massively shift your entire offensive philosophy.
I ran the A.J. Brown progression, if we could put that up. It actually has, because his dip was so sharp.
It's got to bounce back.
He's got to bounce back.
There you go. But not to where he was.
So the optimistic comps are Mike Evans, as far as aging at this point. Mike Evans, Devontae Adams, DeAndre Hopkins, Keenan Allen, Julio Jones, Stephon Diggs. This is Julio at this age. Obviously, Julio later was not great. The cautionary tales include Allen Robinson. Boy, what the heck with his career. Allen Robinson, Dez Bryant, Alshon Jeffrey.
Dez really dropped off fast.
Yeah. Alshon Jeffrey, Robert Woods, and T.Y. Hilton. Different style. Alshon's the most interesting one there, I would say, because he's probably, I would say he's the closest stylistically, but A.J. was a better. Alshon was more, he was fun to watch, but like big, didn't separate a lot, completely won on physicality.
Alshon and Dez Bryant are two interesting comps for A.J. Brown, and they both dropped off pretty fast.
But Hopkins didn't. He did after. Hopkins didn't. And Evans hasn't. I mean, Evans and Nuke are probably, they're pretty good similarity, I think. Dez might, like, what is the closest style comp to? Is it Dez? As far as like speed, physicality?
Yeah. Dez.
For A.J. Brown?
Dez, Alshon Jeffrey are not terrible comps. And, I mean, this is a completely different. I need to remember his name correctly. Justin Blackmon.
Oh, jeez.
Now, okay, obviously, completely different career and reasons for that. But
Blackmon was never good in the sense that he put together full season. He had one good season?
No, yeah, but like,
but he had the
stylistic wise, but stylistically, I think there's some comparisons there to all those guys.
All right, fun breakdown. I like getting some of these progression curves in there. Once again, it's one of the most challenging projections that NFL teams do. They have a lot of data, but it's not a rich enough data set that they feel great about saying age 29 receivers. Like there's not a lot of like straight up cliff analysis.
I think it's one of the hardest things to do is to project when a player is going to start. I mean, this is what for years we had this thing of the Patriots, right? Their philosophy was always be a year early than a year late, right? And that was one of the things, the Patriot way. That was one of the things that they were credited for, is they would always get a guy gone a year before you thought it was going to be the case. And then, oh, look, they're right. Every time, Belichick's a genius, right? This is why he's great. But I do think it's one of the hardest things to do in the NFL now, particularly with the way the game has changed and the way science, information has changed, that right now I don't think we know, right? We're in this world where, again, did Tom Brady just reset the bar, and was he just the first guy effectively to sort of show you where it is now, or was he a complete aberration? And people are really, nobody's going to last till 45. They're going to last to 39 as opposed to 37, right? Like Brady didn't reset the bar. He was a freak in his own right. And again, so this is the tough thing. Like people were starting to, crazy people, were starting to write
idiots,
the Brady eulogies 10 years before the end of his career, right?
Dumb.
And the point is, at that time, it made some sense. He had shown signs of decline, and it was right around the age that typically started to happen for quarterbacks. And then Brady changed that math by 10 years, right? Andrew Whitworth, Jason Peters, players we've already mentioned, Trent Williams. Like, there's a whole Calais Campbell. There's all these guys now that are starting to completely change when you think the decline should come for players. But there's also a lot of guys that are right on schedule, right? The old schedule. So the gap is now opening between, this is when a player used to decline, but now we also know they can go on a decade beyond that. And so you have to at least start thinking about it the usual time, right? This is when a guy used to start to decline, but we also know that potentially this guy could go on for another 10 years.
I mean, you could use the data and just say, okay, most players are going to decline in the 29 to 30 age range. And you could just go by the numbers and say, well, let's get rid of all players once they get to 30.
Yes.
And over time,
and you'll always be right
over like a 50-year period, you'll be like plus EV. The challenge is more like specifically who are the outliers.
Yeah. How do you know when it's Jerry Rice, right?
Yeah.
And you get rid of him at 29 and he's got 15 more years in his career.
Like you've always said about Randy Moss, you thought he would age well because he's got size and ball skills. Dez, size and ball skills. A.J. Brown, size and ball skills. But so does Nuke Hopkins, right? He aged well until later. Versus like Devontae Adams felt like the guy that should regress because he's depending on some quicks and some route running. Like you should lose that more than you lose. You're not going to lose size. You're going to lose route running, right? Well, Devontae Adams has aged way better than some of the other big-bodied receivers who should age better. When Julio hit the cliff, it was sharp.
Yeah.
That thing was steep.
Right.
And I don't know that there's data to even show. I don't even know that like NGS data, the on-field, the tracking data, the speed data, I don't even know if that's going to catch it a year early.
No. But
like I don't know if there's enough data to say, oh, we could tell Julio lost a step a year early. We knew this was going to happen. I don't know if that's clean either.
And this is why I think generally the Patriots approach, the idea of be a year early rather than a year late, is good because most of the time I think directionally that's the right approach. The reason why I think teams don't do that so as much as they should is because if and when you miss on the guy that isn't that, if you get rid of Jerry Rice early, if you get rid of Tom Brady early, it's career killing, right? Like if you're the guy that screws that one up, you get fired immediately and you get ridiculed and you get mocked, and you should. But I don't know if there's a way of knowing, right? If when you have Tom Brady, when you have Jerry Rice, sure, you might be able to think, yeah, he's Tom Brady, he's Jerry Rice, he can go on for a couple more years. I don't know that you can realistically be expected to say he's got another 12 years in him right now. Like, that's insane. The Bengals, when they got rid of Whitworth, could they have known that Whitworth was going to go on for another, how many more years did he last at that point? And he was old at that stage. Like, I don't know that you can realistically be expected to see when these guys are going to go on for like a preposterous amount of time.
And you just know, you just don't know
which guy it's going to be.
Like who the few outliers are. It's all a case by case basis. which is why I've been wrong many times in the past by saying, I don't know, you traded for the big name player. I like it until proven otherwise. But sometimes that year you're proven otherwise.
I mean, Myles Garrett is a great case study now, right? Like the Browns are correct to be at least thinking about how much longer he has at the top, right? Because he's at that age now.
Yeah.
The decline starts. The Sando chart we talked about before. All of the other 10 guys in the bucket of like 4-time All-Pros, they all hit hard, right? So the Browns have to at least be thinking about how much longer at the top has he got. But as Trent Williams said, he's still young. Like Myles Garrett could have another 8 years of being a dominant player. And if that's the case, the Browns look idiotic for trading him away, right? But I don't think that they can realistically be expected to assume that now, right? Like if they think they've got 8 more years of Myles Garrett at this kind of level, it's, in my opinion, ridiculous to trade him away for anything, right? Again, that's back to team, don't trade away elite players. But if he has 2 years like that, and then the third year he hits hard as a regression, well, then they probably should trade him away now. And I don't know that there's a way of knowing which is true.
Man, fun discussion today with all these trades. Appreciate the NFL for giving us something to talk about here.
Now we got all kinds of contract news.
Contract news. I want to start with Drake London re-signing with the Atlanta Falcons since we're talking receivers and A.J. Brown. Drake London will now be – he signed for 4 years, over 140, was it?
Yeah.
Number 3 in wide receiver API now.
Yes.
APY. Or AAV, depending on which abbreviation you like.
I'm
a huge Drake London fan. I've always loved Drake London. I'll tell you what was fun. I watched A.J. Brown. This would be the negative on Drake. I watched A.J. Brown targets and then Drake London targets back to back. And what was really noticeable was the static nature of A.J. Brown's usage, right? He's your X. Every now and again, he'd be in the slot. Versus London being on the move, creative motions, free releases, to the point where there was a couple plays where he's just lined up as a true X, and it's not as clean for Drake London. He's not a clean, great X. I looked it up production-wise. He's like middle tier type of guy. So if there was a negative on the contract, you'd say, okay, he's not your go win one-on-one over and over and over again X receiver. So I think Kevin Stefanski and the group, they got to still get creative with Drake London, but I still love a lot about his game because he's size, hand strength, but he's quick too. Like he's got some quickness both after the catch, at the top of routes. That's what I liked about him at USC. The game that really sticks out was when Atlanta did a really good job. Zach did an awesome job scheming him up in the red zone in the New England game. And he had 3 touchdowns against 3 different corners, or maybe he got matched with Marcus Jones a couple times. Like he got schemed up to just out-muscle the smaller corner. Had some big plays against Christian Gonzalez down the field in that game. So he's physical, wins at the catch point. I like Drake London a lot. He's not your traditional X-type receiver. He could do a little bit of that, but you want to move him around, get him inside, outside, but he could do a lot.
Yeah. We're in this interesting world of wide receiver deployment and philosophy now. And we talked about this a bit with Matt Harmon when he was on the show when you weren't here. But teams have, I think, gotten a way better understanding of this. Happened a while ago where teams started to get like the A.J. Brown's deployment used to be how the best wide receiver on your team was deployed, right? You take your best wide receiver, you play him at X, and that's where he plays. And going back as far as Randy Moss being traded to New England was like you started to see a little bit of that changing. And Belichick talked about this a bit. I forget whose show he was on, but he was like, Randy Moss came in, and Randy Moss and Belichick effectively like got their heads together to try and evolve how Randy Moss was being deployed. Because it was like, okay, he's a superstar at this point. He's so fast. Everyone knows that. So they just put a safety over the top and deploy that safety like 20 yards off the line of scrimmage. And then Randy Moss is like, well, if all I'm doing is running a go route, I can't run past that guy, right? He's 25 yards off the line of scrimmage. I'll roast the corner underneath, but the safety's over. Like, there's no point. If all I'm doing is running a go route down the sideline, they can take that away with a second player over the top, and there's nothing I can do about it, right? And then he's like, well, then you shouldn't throw the ball at me at that point. Yeah, I'll win a couple at the catch point, but like that's a stupid way of doing things. So they kind of collectively, and Belichick was like, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't expect you to, right? That's crazy. So then they collectively said, well, then why don't we start running at that safety? Like instead of just running the go route down the sideline, which is how those guys used to be.
Yeah.
Let's move them inside.
Yeah.
Let's attack that safety. Let's run to the middle of the field, and let's force them into something differently, right? So that, I think, was the sort of first step of this, like, well, hang on. Instead of just running our elite guy into this sacrificial coverage, why don't we start moving him around and, like, giving him the sort of manufactured stuff that we used to do for players that weren't as good. Like, that stuff works for the superstar too. So then you start to see these guys, these elite number one receivers. Why don't we move that guy into the slot, right? Like, the slot is easier because it's easier because of the free release and all that kind of stuff. That also works for the number one wide receiver.
Really quick, that was such a fun adjustment because he would run right at the safety. The safety could have been playing quarters where he had to match him. But a lot of times he was playing cover two. And Moss, once he got close to even, put his hand up and just went. That was fun. That was like being run in the NFL a lot.
But with space now, as opposed to you're backed up against the sideline and the guy's got help effectively anyway.
And he doesn't have help. He is the help. You're running at the help.
So teams started to realize that the stuff that makes it easier for the number two and the slot receiver to have success, right, is also easier for the number one receiver, and he's a better player. So why not just start doing that stuff for those guys, right? And then you end up in this world where all of these elite receivers, Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb, like all these guys are spending a ton of their time schemed up effectively, moved into the slot, given free releases, the Drake London stuff you just talked about. And actually, a lot of them don't actually spend that much time as your true X receiver on the outside because it's a harder gig. So you end up with what Harmon calls those sacrificial X, right? You need someone to play those reps, but that guy doesn't necessarily need to be your number one receiver. So there's this interesting world where you can run the offense through the guy that can't play X, right? Like Amon-Ra St. Brown for the Lions. I don't think he could, if you needed him to just be A.J. Brown, right? If that was his role in an offense, I don't think he would do it particularly well. Sure, he'd have some plays here or there, but I don't think he would be anything like the player he is right now. But you don't need him to be. You can put him in the other role and still run the offense through him, and he can be a dominant receiver and an absolute force. But you're in this weird world now where you've got guys that can do it all. Jamar Chase, maybe the best example of a guy that can be that true X superstar, but also do all of the other stuff at a high level. But you've also, so there's how do you compare guys like him who can do everything and be dominant versus a Drake London who benefits a huge amount from the schemed up stuff, but isn't as good when you ask him to just be the X guy on the outside. And I think a lot of receivers are in that bucket of guys who can be a superstar with all those schemed up things, and you should be running the offense through him, and you should be doing that stuff for him. But if you had to ask him to do the A.J. Brown role, which is smaller and smaller now, what would it look like?
If you had to ask who?
A lot of these guys, Drake London, Amon-Ra St. Brown, like there's a lot of these receivers now where if you said you have to go be A.J. Brown in the Eagles offense for the last few years,
could you do
what would it look like? And it wouldn't be as good. I don't know that means anything, but it is an interesting distinction. Because, so Drake London is now the third best paid receiver in the NFL in terms of APY. One of the two guys in front of him would be the poster child, I would say, for the guy that can definitely do everything, right? Jamar Chase, there's no role you could put him in where he wouldn't be an absolute dominant freak show, right? I don't know that you can say the same thing about some of the other guys that are going to get paid huge money.
Anyway, that was, it's a good, I like London a lot. Good breakdown, though. And, he doesn't have as much flexibility, but I love so much of his game. You know the play that I had forgotten about? Remember when they were playing the Bills on Monday Night Football? They had 6 seconds before the half. He ran a slant, cooked the corner, and almost took it to the house, and he was out at the one.
The only reason that matters, by the way, the can he do everything part of it is when you have a Jamar Chase, you can add any receiver to that receiving core, and and it can move around, right? If you don't have that guy, like if your number one receiver is the guy where you have to sort of scheme it for him, and you add a second receiver to that room, there's a limit. You can't.
You need Mac Hollins. You need someone else to be the sacrificial X.
You can't scheme it up for everybody on all plays, right? Whereas if you have a Jamar Chase, you don't need to. You can give him some plays where you scheme it up for him, and then other plays you just put him out there and let him roast the best player on the field, and it's fine. If you have to scheme it up for your number one guy to be the number one guy, you're sort of limited with the other players that you can hang around that guy.
Jamar Chase is interesting because I've had the same feeling that I had maybe with the Randy ratio stuff. The Randy ratio year that they moved him around, and it's like, we're going to run little hook routes, and we're going to run him over the middle and everything.
Justice for Mike Tice.
It was fine. But it did feel like you're not getting the explosives, and maybe they're just all getting taken away. But there are games where I felt like Jamar Chase got so many manufactured touches, you're taken away from the fact that he could just, line up outside, take a slant to the house, or just run by the defense a couple times a game too.
But that, I think, was why that's why not his production, but that's why I think things started to get a little bit frustrating and stale for Randy Moss at the end of his Minnesota tenure, because they hadn't got to where Randy and Belichick got together with, right? They solved a problem that the Vikings hadn't solved by the end of it. They were still relying effectively on Dante Culpepper being able to throw a ball into a bucket 50 yards down the field into a tiny window that Randy Moss would arrive at, right? They hadn't realized, they were still trying to basically throw the vertical go route against absurd double coverage. What the Patriots, between Moss and Belichick, realized is, well, if we just attack that in a different way, we can still really exploit Randy Moss in a way that the Vikings hadn't figured out yet, right? That, I think, was sort of the eureka moment that they arrived at, whereas the Vikings were still basically just trying to out-execute with two exceptional players against coverage that you should never be targeting.
A couple other re-signings to discuss. So anyway, I love the Drake, London.
It's big money for him, though. Like,
it
third
is.
Best player. I mean, okay, so the one that would be the obvious comp is, like, Drake London's getting paid the same amount of money as Justin Jefferson right now. It's but it's not fair.
I think the wide
a couple of years later.
The reason why this isn't great is the wide receiver market, I believe, is moving at a similar pace as the quarterback market, where the most recent guy is now
getting paid the most.
35, 40. I mean, it's accelerating at a similar rate as the QB market. Now that makes Justin Jefferson want to go back, right? I think people are going to want to go back, get topped off a little bit when it comes to the last 5 to 8 million. But I think the wide receiver market's moving at a pace as close to the quarterback market as we've seen. Maybe the edge, like the high end of the edge rusher market, is doing similar things. No one else, like you could say the center market got reset, but that was just one Tyler Linderbaum deal. I don't know if anyone else is getting that kind of money.
Right.
Steelers made a couple moves. Nick Herbig re-signing, the edge rusher, and Darnell Washington.
Yeah.
The blocking tight end.
There's never been a better time to be a blocking tight end than right now in today's NFL.
I mean, maybe 1986, but since
now,
1980.
You get more money.
You do get more money. They're getting paid.
4-year, $42 million for Darnell.
They're going in the second round. They're getting $10 million a year.
For memes.
They're doing
some
both.
blocking.
The Herbig one was interesting. I saw Schefter saying it's like the most money for a non-starter. Using the term starter for a football player, I don't think is the right way to do things. But there's, kernels of truth in there. He's never played more than like 670 snaps.
A rotational player would be.
He's above, to me, like a starter. Like if you play above 500-600 snaps, you're a starter. Like you're a player that.
I mean,
plays
the third edge would
snaps.
probably be the best way of describing him.
But he's also he's a little over 1,000 snaps in his 3-year career.
Yeah.
So that's a little unprecedented. So I looked that up as well in the data to find some Herbig comps. He's been incredibly productive.
Yes.
Loved him coming out of Wisconsin. He's been outstanding. He's the question for Herbig is when you're does small sample size production
translate
scale? Does it scale to 800 to 900 snap seasons? This happens with number 2 running backs a lot, and this happens with pass rushers, right? Can you go from a rotational pass rusher to an every down guy? So some of the comps that came up as far as low snaps in their first 3 years, but eventually, either were productive and then came good, or were good over the next couple of years. Montez Sweat, Marcus Davenport. Remember, Davenport was always a 500 snap player, and that lasted for a couple of years till injuries crushed him. Greg Rousseau, Carl Lawson, kind of on the other end because he was really up and down, and DeMarcus Lawrence had like a big year 4, 5, 6 breakout. So there's a lot of good, I would say, comps for Herbig of somewhat rotational players. The other one that comes to mind for me was Shaq Barrett. It took him till year 6 to become a full-time player. And he went from that guy that was like number 3 edge on to low. Remember, with Denver, it was DeMarcus Ware, Von Miller, and then Shaq Barrett.
Yep.
So he was the number 3 edge there, rotational player. We always loved him, small sample size effectiveness, small sample effectiveness, and he goes to Tampa, and he was a really good full-time player. So I think there are enough comps historically that you're not concerned about the small sample size with Herbig. I also think with Tomlin and the new scheme, like Tomlin out, new scheme in, we might see more Herbig, Watt, and Alex Highsmith all on the field at the same time, and now you're starting to tap into what they have there, and that 3-man edge room that is really deep, and Jack Sawyer. So I like this move for Pittsburgh because I think they'll use him more. I'm not concerned about the low sample size. He's been incredibly productive, and I think his best football is potentially ahead of him. He could play the run. He plays the run like you described, Cassius Howell, with
speed and
with quicks and speed. He's just so fast and quick, and that works as a rusher and in the run game. Tracks down quarterbacks extremely well. I think he could do some QB spy games and everything, and create some defensive flexibility, like when you're playing Lamar and everything. So I like Herbig a lot as well.
And I think moving TJ Watt around at this point in his career would probably be a good thing for him too.
Yeah.
Like not just deploying all 3 of them on the field at the same time, but actually, Watt has typically been one of those players that lines up in more or less the same place all the time in that Tomlin scheme. Now you might actually move him around, and I think that would benefit him too.
And then Darnell Washington, just a monster as a run blocker. Tight end run blocking is tricky. We broke this down when we were talking about the draft. When tight ends lose in the run game, like the variance in the run game when the tight end wins and loses is pretty wide. And this is part of the justification for paying them is the impact when you can't put the guy in the end man in line of scrimmage, trust him against a defensive end, where they're going to lose more often than not, but some guys have 0 chance, and guys like Darnell Washington have a chance, right? Yeah. They can widen the edge on zone plays. He gets to the second level really well, collapses the edge at times with his power. Some people wanted to move him to tackle. He's that good as a run blocker at times. Like he'll lose quite a few reps in there, but his good reps are strong. And then he's just a monster after the catch, and that was on display. He was their offense at points last year.
Yeah. And also,
before he got hurt.
Look at what just happened in the draft. Like, do you want to be in a position where you need to start overdrafting tight ends by 5 rounds, or do you just want to pay Darnell Washington, right? Like the teams are clearly league-wide in almost a panic buy situation to get blocking tight ends, right? The league clearly thinks that we are pivoting hard towards 13 personnel, heavy personnel again. You need to find a high-end blocker from somewhere, and either you're going to go crazy in the draft to get that guy, or just pay an established veteran, albeit one coming off an injury.
The other re-signing, Derick Hall, Seattle Seahawks edge rusher, 3 years, $42 million extension. I got some comps for him too.
Oh, yeah?
They got some interesting names here. Using my PVM. Again, my proprietary production value metric, MVP backwards, using PVM.
MVP backwards.
So he has had incremental improvement, MVP backwards, 3 straight years, right? So was not great as a rookie. He's gotten better all 3 years. So we're looking at what other players have had similar trajectory.
He's got the neat, the curve.
Gets better every year.
Gets better.
Very neat curve. Ready for these names?
Yeah.
Junior Gillette.
Gillette before
Gillette.
He went crazy.
Junior Gillette, John Simon, Shaq Lawson, Everson Griffin. Most favorable comp because he started slow, then became a really, really good player.
He really did.
D. Ford, completely different style player, but got better in year 3. Nick Bonito had the big year 2 to 3 jump, and Nolan Smith had like a slow start, injuries, but got back. Connor Barwin's another one that came up.
Connor Barwin.
The negative side, so like William Golston is kind of in there as an edge defensive tackle type. Carl Nassib and then Shaq Lawson, they leveled off. So there are some level off type players.
That Shaq Lawson would be the interesting name to comp him to.
Power player style wise,
power player style wise, and really from the entirety of their career, including as a prospect, they just sort of felt like okay, right? Like even Derick Hall as a prospect felt okay. As a player, he's been okay. I saw, Benjamin Solak was out there going, man, I thought he would get basically half the money that he got. He's that type of player. I kind of feel the same way. Like he feels like a solid player. That feels like quite rich money for him. But if the curve keeps going up, it's fine. if the curve levels off and actually this is sort of where he tops out, then it's not.
I think there's some similarities to Trayvon Walker, where you're talking about, Trayvon's an athletic freak, but Hall's just like an enforcer, power player type who has gotten
it's like
better.
Trayvon Walker without the crazy athletic traits.
Without the athletic traits, but like as far as production trajectory. So I think it's decent money. It's I don't want to say it's edge 3 money, but it kind of is. Right, it's probably rich for an edge 3, but I think that's what they're going to bank on him being.
But it's exactly
over the
that.
Next
it's
couple
like
of years.
if this is who he is, it's too much. If he keeps getting better, it's fine.
And the alternative is Boye Mafe making over 20.
Yeah.
Right, so you're going to save a little bit of money there. You might get a little bit lesser of a player than Mafe. It's certainly not like a pure, bursty edge rusher. But I think, as a rotational player in that defense, again, that brings a lot of power to the table. Mm-hmm. Not a bad deal. So I'm not a huge Hall fan. I think he's fine. If you, like I was saying earlier, though, like if you're going to play the percentages on regression candidates and progression candidates, it's actually a pretty good list of comps of players that, if they show that consistent production by year 3, a lot of them have a good years 4, 5, and 6. So I think that's potentially a good buy low type of move for Seattle here, or projecting move from Seattle. How's that? Is that it? Did OBJ officially sign?
Yep.
With the Giants?
Yeah, he's out there taking reps, making one-handed catches already.
He changed the game with that one catch. Everybody practices the OBJ catch.
I don't know that I've ever seen a receiver. Chris Carter would be the only other one. I don't know that I've ever seen another receiver who just catches the football as effortlessly as OBJ does. Like his ability to just like launch himself up in the air and then one-handed pluck the thing out of the sky is nuts. It's probably better than Chris Carter, actually, to be honest. At least I saw Chris Carter walk his way through, how basically teaching people how he practiced to catch one hand. I honestly think OBJ just has this natural, innate, God-given ability to just stick his hand up in the air and pluck something out of the sky that most people cannot. Obviously, hand size and stuff is a big part of it, but that dude has a freakish ability to just catch a football. I think Russell Wilson's doing the rounds again today because of his career and going to CBS and stuff.
We need to discuss him.
I feel like in this world of immediacy and what is the last thing you did for me and stuff, like people have already forgotten what OBJ was right at the start of his career. Like that guy was the best receiver in the NFL when he broke onto the scene immediately, right? And because when he got traded to the Browns and then his whole career basically fell apart from that point, it's like, go back and watch what that dude was doing right away. This is like absolute freakish stuff.
This is the challenge with evaluating players' careers. You look at peaks, best 5 seasons, best 8 seasons, longevity. When he broke in, who were the 3 best receivers? I think Julio Jones, Antonio Brown, like right around that time, right? Those were the 2 guys.
Yeah.
This was pre-Devontae Adams. Nuke Hopkins was just about to become that guy. But there was a point where it's like those are the clear top 2 receivers, I believe, is Antonio Brown and Julio Jones at the time. And then OBJ was so good, you're like, wait, pretty sure he's top 3 to 4.
Already. Right.
Immediately.
Yeah.
As a rookie. He's right there. And this is why like the Mike Evans conversation is difficult, right? Because you would never put Mike Evans into a top 5. I don't think he was a top 5, maybe not even top 8 receiver at any point in his career. But he was
like he's never hit the heights that OBJ did.
Right, but Evans was probably wide receiver 10 to 15.
Yeah, for longer.
For 12 years.
Yeah.
Right? But OBJ's peak was so good. And I don't even know if statistically, whatever, but after the catch point, route running, separation, he did it all to the point where I remember thinking he's in Julio and Antonio Brown territory right now.
Yeah.
As he started.
I mean, his first 3 years in the league were crazy. I mean, it's become sort of standard, right? Like Justin Jefferson did it, then Jamar Chase did it. Like these receivers come in, they're already like every one of them is sort of setting the best number in the first X years of their career type of thing. But like OBJ did that. The first 3 years of his career were nuts. His rookie year, I think he was the best graded receiver in the NFL by PFF, like above Antonio Brown and above.
Did he force like 25 or 30 missed tackles?
Oh, it was crazy.
He was doing it all. Because he was known for the catch and the catch point stuff, but he was great after the catch. He was doing it all.
Yeah.
He did it all. How many times am I going to say the same thing?
That was the ass end of Megatron's career as well. He was in that kind of time.
Calvin's in, right? So there was like a clear-cut 3 or 4 receivers, and I remember just thinking in the first 2 years of OBJ's career, he's immediately there.
Yeah.
Until it tapered off.
Right. But it basically, I mean, he got injured, he got traded to the Browns, and then basically his career never rebounded from that point. I mean, he had that brief stint where he was probably going to win Super Bowl MVP for the Rams before he got hurt.
That's the other thing, too. You knew that they were targeting him, like they were going to take advantage of him and Mike Hilton.
Yeah.
On Mike Hilton in the slot, and he got hurt.
But point is, unfortunately, his career has not been what it should have been because of the combination of being injured and traded to Cleveland.
Cleveland broke him.
But because that happened, I think people need to go and refresh your memory of just how good the guy was for the first few years of his career.
Let's talk Russell Wilson, man. Retiring from the NFL.
Now a colleague of Mike Renner.
Mike Renner's coworker.
I feel like the
CBS.
first show that they put Russ on should be with Mike and using the clip where Mike basically starts talking about him as the corniest person in football. I feel like that would be good TV.
Did Russ's career, because the debates are, is Russ a Hall of Famer? Is he first ballot?
If ever there was a player who is breaking people's ability to discuss anything rationally, it's going to be Russell Wilson. Eli Manning, I guess, as well, is one of those guys. But, everyone's going to be all over the place on Russ. So I tweeted this recently, right? Where is it? Somebody tweeted out, remember there was a while, it's kind of cooled off a little bit recently, but there was a period of time where the most in vogue thing you could possibly tweet out about a quarterback was that graph of EPA per play on one axis and CPOE, completion percentage over expectation, on the other axis, right? And that was basically, for a while, how the nerds decided who was good and who was bad, right? That was your graph, and this is the answer. We have solved quarterback play. This is the chart. And the top right is the best quarterback in the NFL. End of discussion, right? So somebody tweeted out 2012 to 15, Russell Wilson's prime, effectively. He, A, is the best quarterback in the NFL on that chart, but B, is also surrounded by the likes of Peyton Manning, Ben Roethlisberger, Aaron Rodgers, Drew Brees, Tony Romo, all the best quarterbacks in the NFL during that time, effectively, right? So it's basically like open and shut, case closed. People have forgotten Russell Wilson was the best quarterback in the NFL, even though he never got any MVP votes, right? And it's like, look, on the one, I tweeted this out, my tweet. Let me read it to you. On the one hand, I agree that Russell's peak is probably being undersold now because of how his career has declined and ended. On the other, I think this highlights the blind spots of this 2 data point graph that was so popular for a period of time.
Ron Yurko, who does professor at, is it Penn? Anyway, I don't want to really sharp, one of the sharp nerds, analytics guys.
Sharp nerds.
I finally said what I was thinking about CPOE as a receiver stat.
Yeah.
I hate the stat generally. I think there's a million flaws with it. Now I sound like the people who are like, PFF sucks, because they don't know what goes into it, and I do. I know what goes into CPOE, but I don't, I'm not, in the formula or anything.
Mm-hmm.
I've never loved that as a stat. I think Russ's career is this: top 8 receiver, top 8 quarterback for the majority of his career. Top 8.
Yeah.
He was in that elite group of 8. He was in the top 8 in a world where there was an elite 4. There was an elite 4, Brady, Manning at the beginning of it, Rodgers and Brees. During that decade, those are the elite 4. And then there was the full 8 to 10 of Russ and Andrew Luck and Matt Ryan and Phillip Rivers and Big Ben. Like, that's the next tier. And I think Russ was dead smack in that top 8 group. There was a point where he dabbled as a top 3 for like 2019 into 2020. And then he hurt his finger and it just all fell apart after that. But he was probably, I'd say there was, when we talk about like OBJ was top 3 for 2 years and Mike Evans was top 10 for 12 years. Russell Wilson was a top 8 quarterback for probably 8 years, a top 3-ish quarterback for like a year and a half. And that's his career. The other tricky part about Russ, and when you evaluate quarterback play, most statistical analysis uses efficiency stats per snap, right? I think it loses the volume piece in football.
Yeah.
Right? One of my favorite stats about, say, like Brady is when he throws 50-plus times. He's got like a 600 record, and the rest of the NFL is a 150 record.
Yep.
And I know there's some correlation, causation there. I understand. But the point was Brady, Peyton, Breeze, when you gave them high-volume games, you said, hey, when Brady went and threw the ball 23 straight times against the Williams Wall against Minnesota, go win the game. We're throwing today. That's it.
Yep.
Russ was always in a run, play-action type of offense, which he executed beautifully.
Yeah.
But he would win a lot of games, going 17 of 22, right? And so I think the efficiency stats are better because he had a great deep ball, and he threw it extremely well, and it helped his yards per attempt, it helped his EPA, and all those things. He was never truly trusted to go throw it 40, 45 times and go win the game.
So this is the thing. I think Russell Wilson is the most complicated quarterback this century. Because even guys like Eli Manning, his career is pretty simple. It's like generally you were pretty mid, but you had a couple of amazing Super Bowl runs, and that's your argument effectively. Longevity and the fact that you had 2 amazing championship runs, which you were integral parts of, which put you on an all-time level in terms of storytelling, and that's your Hall of Fame argument. Russell Wilson, I think, is the most complicated quarterback in the NFL because of some of the stuff you've articulated, and the fact that the league, I think, shifted late in his career to sort of take away the thing that he was really, really good at, that, and the fact that he's this short quarterback that had to play the game in a different way. Like, there's highlight reels doing the rounds now where it's like, oh, look at prime Russell Wilson. And it's, running around behind the line of scrimmage for 5 seconds, finding a play, and then heaving a deep ball to, like, Doug Baldwin or whatever, right? And now, like, the league sort of has taken that away. Like, he lost some speed, and his ability to do that declined as well. But also, this shift towards the sort of Fangio styles of defense to take away explosive plays and take away the things that Russ was so good at, and it changed the way he could play the game, and that coincided with his decline late in his career as well. But because of what you mentioned, like he's a guy that you can't just evaluate as was he good or bad, right? It's like within a specific style of offense, he could put up performances and numbers that rivaled Peyton Manning and Drew Brees and Aaron Rodgers. But he couldn't do all the things those guys could do, right? So if you had to have, like, in games, like the ones you mentioned where, we're running up against the Williams Wall, Brady, you're going to pass the ball 50 times today, we're going to run the ball 3 times, good luck, right? Okay, cool, that's the game plan, let's go. And Brady could execute that, and Peyton Manning could execute that, and Drew Brees could execute that. Russ couldn't. And there's something to that, right? And the fact that we had this whole period of time during his peak years where the nerds, the analytics nerds, were like, let Russ cook. Let him throw more, right? Look at him. He's amazing. He's putting up numbers that rival these guys. Look at the chart, the CPOE, and even if it predated that chart. Like, they were effectively using those charts as an argument to say, let him throw 50 times a game, right? Yeah. But the Seahawks knew, Pete Carroll and the Seahawks staff, multiple staffs, by the way, like multiple coordinators, understood there was a part of Russ's game that would not translate if you asked him to do that. And there were games where he had to do it, and it didn't necessarily go that well. So it's not like it was guesswork. They understood that there were limitations to Russ that meant they couldn't do those things. So you had to have an offense that leaned on the run game a bit. You had to have the Legion of Boom defense that allowed them to stay in certain game scripts. Which isn't to say that, Russ was a fraud and Russ wasn't good and he was a product of the
discussion's Hall of Famer versus my original assessment, like top 8 quarterback of his generation,
but it's also,
which I think he was.
It's a bit like the wide receiver discussion we had before. It's like the Drake London, Amon-Ra St. Brown versus Jamar Chase discussion, right? If you have to do something that makes Chase go and play X receiver every play of the game, it works fine, right? If that same thing happens for Drake London and Amon-Ra St. Brown, it might not work fine, right? That's like Russell Wilson, where if you run up against a team where you cannot run the ball and you're going to have to throw 50 times to win this game, Peyton Manning and Tom Brady and Drew Brees and some of these other quarterbacks can do that, and it's fine, right? If that happens to Russell Wilson, it's not going to be fine. That's the differentiator. And that, again, it doesn't mean Russ sucks, but it means there's a missing thing to his game that isn't the case for some of these other great quarterbacks. And if you just look at that chart where he's right at the top end with all those other guys, you lose that. It's a blind spot of that chart. Like there's something missing there that you lose that context. And people will lose that context when they just look back at his career and look at the numbers and start to argue his Hall of Fame credentials or whatever. I think he's the most complex quarterback in the last 25 years to analyze.
Yeah, because he was an amazing third-round pick. He was I think he was a bit of a game changer because he was short and had a lot of success, and maybe opened the door for guys like Baker Mayfield
100%
to go number one overall.
That
him and Breeze. I mean, Breeze was better, but him and Breeze having success at the same time.
But that should absolutely be part of his legacy as well. That quarterbacks are in the NFL right now being given starting opportunities because of Russell Wilson's career.
He had incredible off-platform, off-schedule plays. He's a very good runner. The other complicating factor, extremely high sack rate, absurdly high, like 2x what those other top quarterbacks were bringing to the table. But again, you balance that out with his scrambling ability. So it's a unique case because he was always a low-volume QB. And again, you don't use the Legion of Boom to disparage him. We could do both things at the same time.
Well, I mean, people do, though.
But he was really good on that 2013 Super Bowl run. I mean, he was really good in the playoffs generally. Yeah. He was really good in the Super Bowl in 2014 when they lost to the Patriots and blew it at the end. So there's a lot to like about Russell Wilson as a player. I think he's very similar to Matt Ryan in the slight. I think Matt Ryan was very good. The confounding factors for Matt Ryan is he was part of the biggest Super Bowl collapse, right? If you just give Matt Ryan, just sneaks that one ring in there, then he's got one ring of Russ and one ring of Matt Ryan. I think Matt Ryan was a better quarterback for a majority of his career. But what I would use against Matt Ryan is he always had Julio, he always had a dome, and I think those things work for. I think in Russ's column
and his
playing in Seattle in the rain all the time, and he still put up all those really good numbers, right? There's a lot of back and forth on
and the
things.
Matt Ryan, the fact that Russ never got an MVP vote, right? Whatever that is, but Matt Ryan has the MVP season. And even that is it's your Shanahan year. Does that count? So it's the kind of pinnacle of Matt Ryan's career. You can basically say, well, that was a Shanahan data point, not a Matt Ryan data point.
Russ was probably closest 2019 when he came in fourth in Offensive Player of the Year, 31 touchdowns, 5 picks. So that's what I was saying. The 19 to 20 season is when I think he elevated his game to an incredible level, and then it started to taper off.
But don't you agree as well that so Matt Ryan is a solid comp in terms of level and overall, but he's so much more of a simple evaluation, right? As opposed to the complexities of Russ's career.
Yeah, there's a lot.
Matt Ryan, just good player for most of it, MVP for the 1 year he got Shanahan, choked in a Super Bowl, the end. Right? It's that's pretty simple in terms of evaluation.
As effective and efficient as Matt Ryan was, he always had Julio and a Calvin Ridley or a Roddy White. He always had a really good 1-2 punch at receiver, including the elite guy, and he played more than half of his games in a dome because he's playing New Orleans once he played a lot of indoor football, which helps.
The closest player I can think of to complexity in terms of evaluating his career is Stafford now, with the Lions part of his career and now the Rams part of it.
That's a good point because again, the argument I used against Stafford is, now we're just going to get down the rabbit hole. The argument I would use against Stafford was always he was QB 10 or 11 of his generation. Now, he's in the second part of his career. Mm-hmm. The first half of his career, though, all those quarterbacks that I listed, Russ was ahead of him. Russ was a better quarterback than Stafford for the majority of their respective careers. Now, you could say, well, he's in Detroit and blah. Fine, I get it. And maybe that was proven correct because once you put him into a better situation, all of a sudden Stafford's better. Maybe he's always that guy. And that's the other tricky part, right? When we hear Aaron Rodgers announced his retirement and the debate's the most talented quarterback of all time. It's oh, there's John Elway. No, it's Patrick Mahomes. Who is it? No, it's Josh Allen. Talent doesn't matter in that discussion because we're watching them play football. It doesn't matter if you had the cooler throws or the further throws. At some point, production matters. But where it does matter is when there were people in 2013, 14, and 15 man, Matthew Stafford, if he just had the right situation, he's got all the tools, he's got all the talent, he'll do it. And they were proven right when you get to McVay and the Rams and what happened from 2021 and beyond.
And the reason it's so complex is, even just okay, Stafford had Stafford had Megatron, right? And it's this fascinating world because he had Megatron before the developments that we just talked about with wide receivers and how to get those elite guys away from he had Megatron at a period of time where you could still not take away those guys, but where you could cause them real problems with the type of coverage you deployed, right? And literally at the same time that the Patriots were discovering this way of still maximizing Randy Moss, the Lions were trying to figure out how to get Calvin Johnson away from literally two guys lining up on him at the same time at the line of scrimmage in the red zone, right? Like he's a gunner on a punt team. Like the Saints walked two guys out there to cover Calvin Johnson. And the Lions hadn't yet figured out how do we get away from that? Like, how do we move him away? How do we still exploit that? And so you have this world where you're like, well, obviously, he's got the best receiver in the NFL on his team. That's a huge boost for Matthew Stafford, right? But because the Lions hadn't sort of figured out how to get him away from this kind of crazy coverage, it actually meant that Matthew Stafford threw a bunch of idiotic passes in the vague general direction of Megatron, some of which he came down with because he's Megatron, a lot of which he didn't. And so actually there were times where if Megatron is not in the lineup, Stafford plays the game in a better way than when Megatron is in the lineup.
They had some really good years, though.
I know they did, but my point
including the record-setting year for
But if you put
Calvin.
Megatron in Sean McVay's offense, right? McVay has a much better understanding of what to do with that guy than the Lions did for a lot of that period of time. So as much as you just look at it and you say, Megatron is a massive boost to Matthew Stafford's play in Detroit, not necessarily because of the way that they hadn't yet figured out how to maximize that. And
I mean, statistically, it was fine because they were always playing from behind and they got to feed him a lot. Maybe not win-loss.
But that's my point, is that there were times where Stafford actually had better numbers at times without Megatron in the lineup. Like when he was forced to effectively play the game in an honest way, he actually played better than when he was just targeting Megatron. I think a large part of that is because at that point, defenses were putting him in very difficult situations. And if you're still just forcing the ball in the direction of that guy, you're going to have, like, that guy's going to put up numbers because you're forcing the ball there, but it means your offense isn't as efficient as it should be, right? And that, I think, is the development that happened right after that kind of period. And McVay was one of the guys at the forefront of that. Like, his best receivers have typically been the guys that are not lined up at X, right? McVay has been one of the forefront coaches in terms of maximizing that element of it. And so you're in this development, you're in this world where, like, what you would, that's again the complexity, right? You can argue that as both a positive and a negative to Stafford's overall play.
But it also goes to the point of we don't know how these QBs are going to age. I mean, Russ's drop off is like perfectly in line with a 1980s or 90s quarterback. Yeah. Like once you hit 34, 35 years old, don't know what we're going to get. I'll tell you this too. I know I mentioned it on the other show, and Will's probably got like 15 meetings that he's missing because we're going late today. But mentioned that a couple shows ago, how are the mobile quarterbacks going to age? Is Russ not the first data point, but one of the earlier data points? Steve Young was this guy. Randall Cunningham to a point. Randall had a nice, really late year, but Russell Wilson did not age well.
No.
After 33, 34 years old, for a guy that relied on his legs, and you tangibly saw it, right? Once he hit like 34, once he got to Denver, even maybe his last year in Seattle, you're like, doesn't have the same quicks, doesn't have the same escapability, and so much of his game was predicated upon that. He did not age well. This is why I brought up a couple weeks ago, or last week, Lamar, Allen, and Mahomes, how they age is going to be a really interesting story for the next 8 to 10 years.
But furthering the complexity, I think a huge part of the way he played the game with his legs was because of his height, right? And he had to play the game in a unique way. And at the time where the league was predominantly, the Legion of Boom, where the league was cover 1, cover 3, single high safety, deep shots were everywhere. Explosive plays were everywhere. Like, that was a way you could attack an NFL defense and have a really effective offense, right?
Now that you're talking through it, the Legion of Boom set up the league for exactly how Russell
for Russ
Wilson
to
wants
play.
to attack.
100%. Like, this
Yes.
is why, again, this is why it's such a complicated legacy. So at Russ's peak, he could do all those plays where he's running around behind the line of scrimmage and then finds the space for a deep shot, a moon ball, and 50-yard, boom, explosive play, done, right? As soon as the league started pivoting towards the Vic Fangio cover 6, cover 4, 2 high safeties, cover shells, take away the explosive plays, again, it coincided right at the point where Russ started to lose some athleticism as well. So it was like a double whammy. But the point is that stopped that style of play. So even if he'd been the player he was physically, I think he would have had a leg chopped out from under him. The fact that he also started to decline physically at that point meant both legs got chopped out from under him, and he just wasn't a viable starting quarterback really anymore. So it's such a complicated legacy because there's so many little elements to the Russell Wilson thing, and yet it's all going to get boiled down to just, was he elite, yes or no, right? It's idiotic. But I think he's, again, the most complicated quarterback in the last 25 years to fairly evaluate.
And just to put a bow on it, when you're debating Hall of Fame status or not, which is what most of us do,
yeah,
that's not disparaging. I think he's a top 8 quarterback of his generation. I think that's quite the compliment. And then my question is, should the top 5 guys of a period get into the Hall of Fame? Should the top 8?
It's where you set the line. In my opinion, putting Russ in a conversation with Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, et cetera, is crazy. He's not at that level. But that's not where the line is for the Hall of Fame.
Right.
The line is going to be, where is he compared with Phillip Rivers? And that's a much more complicated question to answer.
But I think he's in that tier. Him, Rivers,
that's what I'm saying. So
Matt Ryan.
Those are the guys that are borderline Hall of Fame or not, and some of those guys are going to get in. And then I think there's a pretty strong case for putting Russ in
that tier with a completely different style, because his style is like a little bit of Aaron Rodgers with touchdown interception ratio effectiveness, but the high sack rate, but it's a little bit of scrambling quarterback, but it's low volume. That's why I think you're saying he's one of one in uniqueness when it comes to his style and his career path.
His Hall of Fame case, I think, is significantly stronger than Eli Manning's. Russ was a very good quarterback.
Yeah.
Seriously, though, Eli Manning's career, Eli Manning's Hall of Fame case, in my opinion, is almost 100% just 2 playoff runs, right? He was effectively an average starting quarterback for an entire career, and you can stack up whatever longevity bonus points you want to give him for that, and then had 2 spectacular playoff runs that resulted in 2 championship rings, and that is his resume, right? Russell Wilson is 1 play away from matching those 2 Super Bowl championship rings, albeit I would say Eli Manning was a bigger percentage of the run than Russell Wilson was, but let's call that even, right? He's 1 play away from being even in postseason legacy, and he was a way better regular season quarterback than Eli Manning was for his career. So it's a better resume.
It's good for social. It's good fodder for social. Put it out there for everybody. Clip it. Let's do it. Let the people discuss. Hear what you have to say. Last piece of news, really quick. Christian Watson and the Green Bay Packers have agreed to a 4-year, $110 million contract. So a big investment in a guy that's had the hamstring issues, but when healthy, has been in a world where we're like, who's the number 1 receiver in Green Bay? He's been the most effective, whether you call him a 1 or not. High volume, not necessarily, but legitimate big play threat. He's been better than I thought he would be coming out too.
He was spectacular last year.
The size and speed, they moved him into the slot a couple times, created some big plays, like watching him move around. So the number 1 most effective weapon for Jordan Love getting paid here.
Yeah. If he picks up this season the way he played last season, that's absolutely – he's a fantastic player at that point. He's become a way better player last year than last year coming off the ACL was by far the best season of his career, and he looked amazing. If he's that guy going forward, that's absolutely a guy you want to lock up.
Let's find comps. Reminds me a little bit of Nico Collins, the way it's maybe not to Nico's level, but started a little slow and then just got to a point where it's all right, his size and speed are effective.
One last point, by the way, on the Russell Wilson thing.
Yes.
He deserves no blame whatsoever for we didn't run Marshawn Lynch, the Malcolm Butler interception. Nothing to do with Russ, effectively.
You broke down the day after why that play worked, because he's just catching and throwing.
Why it made sense. Yeah,
right,
it's not even a read. It's basically it's a play designed.
It's like throwing a screen because there's a a block. It's
Right.
it's essentially like the screen where
it's a pick play. Like it's literally the pick play. It's a pick play that effectively has no read on it. They are lining up that the top guy takes away the coverage and the under guy runs the slant and Russ is just thrown to a point, right? And the point is the Patriots knew it was coming, anticipated it, and Malcolm Butler makes one of the greatest plays in the history of the game and gets in front of that, beats the player to the spot. He makes the play. Was it Brandon Browner on the point who blew up
Yes.
So Brandon Browner makes an incredible play. Malcolm Butler makes an incredible play. Russ throws an accurate ball to the right spot, and it's just that his guy isn't there. A different guy is there instead. And you can blame Pete Carroll all you want in terms of the play call, but Russ's part of that was, he did what he was supposed to and threw it accurately, and it's not his fault at all that the Patriots made the play. So, I don't think you can use that as a ding for Russ's legacy. He didn't make the play he threw the ball to the right spot at the right time, and two people just made better plays than his receivers.
Brandon Browner, Super Bowl
legend,
and two-time champion, right? Because he was on the 2013 team, right? The year before.
Yes.
Brandon Browner revenge game.
Yeah.
Got it. All right, that's it for us today. Quick show. That was fun, man. Had some NFL news to talk about and ramble and go in depth with. Go in depth on. Appreciate everybody being here and dealing with the initial issues. A lot of you didn't even know that we had initial issues.
Well, not if you only came to the second stream, yeah.
We didn't even get into your citizenship.
No, but it's happening now, apparently, officially. Went into a black hole for 9 months. 6 months? 9 months. 9 months of nothing. And then an email saying there's been some movement on your case. And then today, another email saying 3 weeks today is your
June 23rd
ceremony. Huh? 25th, didn't I say?
Oh, maybe 25th. Well, congratulations. Welcome to the States. Welcome to America.
Yeah, thanks.
We'll officially welcome you on the 25th. Send a care package. Check the mic at the33rd team.com if you want the address. If you want to send Sam a welcome to the U.S. care package.
Maybe it was buying a 65 Mustang that got me over there.
That's what it was. There's nothing more American than that, Sam.
Really
nice job. Good job being American.
Sitting in my own garage ripping apart my 65 Mustang. It doesn't get any more American than that.
And then finally I did make my return to baseball last night. Pitched an inning.
In the old men's league.
The old men's league. My catcher, I don't know how many of these people are going to listen to this show. Our catcher's on the older side. So
all you can do is be fair.
Well, he told me, he's like, I'm old and lazy. I catch on my knees.
Well, there you go. If he said that, it's fine.
He's pretty good, though. Good job.
Catching on his knees just feels efficient.
Look at this. This is me. This is my first batter.
He literally is just sitting there.
He is, just on his knees. And I broke a bat.
Is there any reason he needs to be not on his knees? That feels just better efficiency.
Yeah, it's harder to block when there's guys on base. So I came in. I didn't even get a fresh inning. I came in with runners on base.
Yeah?
Because the starter wanted to keep going. I warmed up. I was supposed to pitch in the fourth, and I was all warmed up and ready to go. And he's like, "Oh no, I got another one in me."
Yeah.
So I'm sitting there all warmed up. We used to have a term for that. I won't bring it up, but broken bat first. And these guys, this is the best team in the league, in the men's league.
Oh, yeah?
They started the game with back-to-back triples. They're just dropping absolute bombs. They hit the ball to the wall 4 times in this game. So it's the best team in the league.
Huh.
They were hitting our starter. The starter settled down.
Where was this?
Crosley Field.
I don't know where.
That's what the Reds used to. It's up in Blue Ash.
Okay.
We played.
Yeah.
Does that matter?
Well, it's just quite
Under
far.
the lights.
It's quite
night
far
game.
away from me.
Had not pitched in a competitive game since 2012. That was one 6-inning outing in a better men's league back then, and I retired in 2011. That was my last real game. So I was on 15 years of rest or so, 14 years. A little sore today, but I got 6 ground balls. 3 of them were outs. 2 of them were singles, just in the hole. And 1 was a fielder's choice, should have been out at the plate. So I think it was all right. Didn't strike anybody out.
So the pitcher's
Command was a little off.
Your numbers are, there's some fuzzy gray area depending on how the fielding goes, or you just get...
Yeah, like an ERA. So your ERA is how many earned runs you've given up. So you give up a run, and then there's a classification, is it earned or not? Is it all the pitcher's fault, or did the fielders let you down?
Right.
So if a guy reaches on an error and he scores, it's unearned.
But what
it's
if
not on your ERA?
So what you're saying is that the area of fuzziness in terms of pitcher statistics is determining So obviously, if a ball goes to a fielder and he just fumbles it, that's not earned, right? That's the pitch.
Yeah. But there's an official scorer who makes the judgment.
But where
call.
it becomes fuzzy is when you're dealing with old, slow athletes who simply can't get to a ball that faster, younger athletes would get to. That's the fuzziness, right? So in this league, that might go in your stats, whereas
that's not even fuzzy. Like those are just going to be called hits in my fielding independent.
But
ERA
morally. So morally, you feel that those are unjust.
I mean, yeah. I mean, there were some ground balls where you turn and I'm like, oh, that's an out. I'm like, oh, he's not. That's in the hole, I guess. That's a hit. Where there was actually some gray area, there was a ground ball to our third baseman with a man at third, and he threw home. And it probably should have been an out, but the throw was a little low. And that's like it could have just go down as a fielder's choice or an error. I don't know. It depends on where.
Okay.
Don't have an official score, so I'm not really sure. But I gave a bunch of ground balls and broke a bat, walked a hitter.
That sounds like there's a lot more.
Got a little tired.
A lot more subjectivity in baseball stats than I was led to believe.
Yeah, there's an official, like a guy who makes a call.
Yeah.
On the hitter, and then a lot of times they favor the hometown. The hometown team. I'll give it a hit.
I mean, I was led to believe that baseball was this bastion of objectivity and statistics, and actually it's the same as any other sport. It's just some guy out here going, yeah, that feels like an out. Or that feels like a fielder's fuck up.
A guy who used to cover us at UMass Lowell wrote for the Lowell Sun. He was a Red Sox official scorer for like 50 years. That was one of his jobs. He was like a Lowell Sun reporter and Boston Red Sox official scorer.
Right.
Pretty
so
sweet.
This guy's out here single-handedly changing Moneyball.
Yeah, but that's why Moneyball existed, because now we have like hard hit rate and everything, and it's like, oh, you take that out. Who cares if the scorer called it a hit or an error? It's just you hit a piss rocket 110 miles an hour. You know what I mean? We had that debate last night. Like a guy hit absolute missile by the third baseman. Somebody's like, that's an error. You got a glove on it. It's like, no, it's not. That ball was by him before he even got his glove to it. That thing was hit too hard. That's a hit. The dumbest rule is when you'll love this. So like if a fly ball's right to you and you drop it, error, right?
Sure.
Fly ball's right to you and you lose it in the sun and you go like this and it falls right behind you.
That's not an error?
Hit. It's the dumbest thing
How
in
is that
baseball.
not an error?
It's just stupid.
It's like your fault.
The sun's in my eyes. I can't catch it. It's a hit.
I mean, it's your fault that you lost it in the sun or the lights.
Of course it is.
It's like, so apparently in tennis, right? This is because the French Open is happening right now, and it's like 1,000,000 degrees, right? And everyone's cramping to death, right? Some guy won his game and then collapsed in a total body cramp, right? So if you ever had like one leg go out, imagine everything going out at the same time.
What does that feel like?
So, I don't know, but he just like hit the ground and everyone thought he was sort of celebrating, like, and it turned out he was like actually spasming because all of his muscles at once
push all your
were like were
everything
cramped,
away,
right? But apparently in tennis they have a rule where if you're injured, you can have like a physio come out and deal with you. If it's cramp, which is termed a conditioning problem, like if you're just not conditioned,
didn't drink enough water and stuff,
then it's on you, right? So you have these guys literally like cramping to death and can't move, and it's like, nah, you're on your own. But if they fudge the thing and you're like, nah, he's injured, it's a knee injury, right? Then the physio can come out and be like, take some of this. So it's like on the one hand, I kind of get it as a line to draw. On the other hand, when in practice, that feels like quite a fuzzy line, right?
Yeah.
Because ultimately,
no, I'm hurt.
Like there's a lot of times, like ripping a hamstring is a conditioning issue potentially, right?
True.
And yet, that's where we're going to draw the line. So it's like, yeah, it's funny.
Interesting. Just made up rules.
Yeah,
like in baseball.
But it's like there's so much of the world, I think, where it's like the rule. You understand why the rule was drawn that way, and yet in practice, with modern technology or whatever, it's like it's actually a stupid thing to try and differentiate.
Oh man. Anyway, I a little rusty. Threw more balls than I would have liked. Didn't throw the split.
I mean, that doesn't shock me from my brief experience of trying to hit you.
Oh man, I wasn't worried about hitting you. I didn't hit anybody. That was good.
Were you? Yeah, well, that's a big
step
in the right
direction. But for a team
that
was dropping bombs all day, best team in the league, got a bunch of ground balls.
Step in the right direction is not being concerned about hitting the guy you're pitching, because that was your big downfall with me.
No, I wasn't concerned.
You seemed petrified of hitting me with the ball.
My teammates, so the other thing I was worried about was warming up too much, right? You warmed up too much. They seemed to think I started to throw harder as the game went on, as I got loose.
You got into it.
Yeah.
Well, maybe that was your problem with me. Maybe you actually were throwing like 84 at one point. It's just that was 20 minutes before you
It was too
actually
early.
started throwing
Yeah.
to me.
Maybe pitches like 30 to 40 or like when I peak. Anyway, good times. Try it again next Wednesday. See how it goes.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to have to strike some people out, though. I can't rely on the defense.
No, apparently. Yeah.
That's why I got sent down from AAA with the Mariners.
The other people.
Well, we had like first baseman play in left field.
Supporting cast. That was your problem. Yeah.
Jack Wilson, major league shortstop, comes down not making plays for me. We had a first baseman playing left field. I hope they don't listen to the show. Jack Wilson's kid's now one of the best players in MLB.
Ah.
But he was down there like routine plays at short. Just, a little late on it. Got a bad read. Sorry. Hit. Fly ball to left. We've got our first baseman out and left. Sorry. Fell in. 3-run double.
Never really occurred to me before how dependent pitchers were on other people making plays for them.
Well, that's why they have fielding independent ERA, where they say, look, what you do control is strikeouts, walks, and bombs. Those are the things you don't home runs. You don't rely on the defense. So all the metrics, it's like those are the stable metrics that you build, around.
Right.
But my BABIP, batting average on balls in play.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
Huh.
Like your batting average on balls in play should be about 300 historically. Meaning when the ball's hit in play, hitters will hit about 300. If you're above that, it's supposed to be unlucky. Mine was like 550 in my last year in AAA. That's why I got sent down because the defense sucked.
Okay.
It's their fault. Anyway, I can't induce ground balls because we can't make all the plays. So I got to start striking people out. Take things into your own hands.
Right.
And I didn't do that well.
Don't leave it like the MMA, right? Don't leave it in the hands of the judges. Don't leave it in the hands of your supporting cast because apparently they're not very good.
It's not. It's just that men's league the range is lower in the men's league.
But that is not being very good.
Okay, fine. All right. Well, that's enough.
I'm not saying there's not reasons for it. Like they're 50 years old and not great. That's your reason. But
David, you're going to hit the ball.
Point is, you can't trust them.
Off me? I don't think so. Maybe.
I don't think it's that hard, to be honest.
I wonder if I can get it up to 85. Think I can crank it up to 85?
I don't, honestly, based on what little I've seen.
I think your gun was off.
No, the gun was perfectly accurate. Well, if my gun is accurate, if my gun is off to the tune of 10 miles an hour for you,
then good for you.
Then I'm throwing 70.
By the way, the pitcher on the other team was throwing gas. And so, they wanted to know if I wanted to hit. Nope.
Not with him. Next week.
No. Maybe next week. Yes, but not.
I'm going to need a week to warm this up.
Because I'm on 15 years rest pitching. I'm on 26 years rest hitting. I have not hit consistently in 26 years.
I think that's going to be, whatever you emerge as a pitcher now, but I think you're going to be able to hit. I think you're going to be able to drop some bombs, hit it.
I could, but I can hit bombs in BP. Hit the ball hard.
That's what I'm saying.
But in games?
I think you're going to be a good hitter.
Squaring it up?
I think at this level, this is one of those things where it's like late in my career when I moved to safety. I think this is a late career switch to you. You're going to be you're going to pitch because that was what you did. But I think you're going to have a second life as a hitter now.
Okay, well, we'll see how that goes. Can't believe I was actually out there, but good times. All right, that's it for us today. Appreciate everybody for being here, for tuning in, talking NFL news, your citizenship, baseball careers, whatever we're rambling about. We'll be back again Monday morning, 9 a.m. More. Check the mic.